In the room. Yes, we're going to record this session. Familiar faces. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our E-Track. Filling up the room. So we'll kind of get the room fill up. We got to like press admit several times, get everybody in here. And when it seems to slow down, I'll get going. What you can do if you want is there's a couple things you can do while we're waiting. If you want to like change your name, like put your company name after your name, so we know your company, get a little awareness going on. And then, we're going to do breakout sessions again. We'll talk about the topics of the day. And if you want, so we've been dividing the breakout sessions into like healthcare, life science. We had SaaS and software, but if we can get enough people in other micro segments like ed tech or e-commerce or marketplace, or what might be the same thing, we're going to do food and beverage and consumer packaged goods. But you could like suggest a breakout segmentation in the chat, and then we'll see if we get enough people in the same group. And anyways, like then you may even just find each other in the chat and you can meet up later. But we do our best to try to do this. It's a little bit on the fly. All right, we've got 40s. The ticker's still going up. But can we get 50? I got 47. Do I hear of a 50? We have 50. Yay. I really appreciate you guys coming out. We've been doing this every week. It's like, I think there's 15 sessions. So in person and Zoom. So we hope, I don't know if you guys have a preference for one or the other, but I think now you've got to like see everybody in person. Put in, you can chat in the hallway or you can chat in our breakout room. So there's Victoria. I can see I see there's a cohort of folks that attend every single one. Jordan, Jeff, Danny. Gotta get to my next page. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. So for people that are coming in, feel free to change your name to not change, keep your name the same, but after your name, add your company name, right? Awareness, put your company name after you go into, I think you can go into the little dots and it says rename. You do the rename. Then you went, no, we'll try that. If not, use the chat to tell us who you are and use the chat to tell us like your industry segmentation, because you can be an industry like healthcare or fintech, but then there's like the platform software. So we do our best to try to find enough, aggregate of people. So now it's been almost 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and do a little introduction and tell you what we've got on tap for you tonight. All right, we're gonna get into the presentation mode. All right, so welcome everybody. I'm Amy Duncan. I'm the director of the Break SBDC. I've been moderator or host of this E-Track series, and I'm so appreciative for you guys coming and joining us and learning and preparing, getting ready to pitch and enter the SDAC conference if you so desire. So first I have to thank the University of San Diego, and specifically the Canal School of Business. This is the host of the Brink SBDC and the San Diego Angel Conference. If you've had a chance to come to our in-person meetings in the Nexus Theater, which is in the Canal School of Business, beautiful space. And then we also have our pitch deconstructions next door in the Manchester Theater. So it's a great space. We're so fortunate to have a modern and beautiful space to go to work in and have our entrepreneur events. And so also our title sponsors for the San Diego Angel Conference are at C3 Bank. And specifically today, I want to call out Coeptis in the bottom left here with Brian Dirkmatt, who will be speaking about corporate legal issues. So we're happy to have him as a sponsor and speaking tonight. And of course, our partners, San Diego has a great, vibrant, robust ecosystem of support organizations for founders, for innovation, and specifically, I want to call out the Small Business Administration. They are funding, they provide funding so that we can have these types of events, so that we can have the BRINC and the advisors that provide the one-on-one advising. And of course, over here on the left, the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, which also provides a good chunk of funding, and they're coming next week. I'll talk about that in a second. I also, over here on the bottom, Connect, which is also an SBDC, a sister SBDC to the BRINC, one of the 11 in our SBDC network down here in San Diego and Imperial County. So next week is our third pitch deconstruction out of 4, and my grant funders are coming down to kick off one of our grants. We're going to have meetings during the day, and then we're going to move it into pitch deconstruction. They're going to be there. I want them to see all of your pitches. They want to see it. So I want to see the registration numbers just tick up. I want you guys to be there, do your 1-minute pitch, which is really easy, right? You just get on. If you haven't been there before, we have a stage. Get up, do a 1-minute pitch, right? It's a safe space. If you mess up, we don't care. We help you. Like, we actually try to help you if we feel like you're stuck. And then everybody gets to vote for the top 3 to 4 to go on and do the 3-minute pitch with slides, and then there'll be judges there who will give you some feedback. So it's a great experience. You don't have to pitch. You can come and watch. But if you are raising and you want to practice pitching, this is a great space. So scan the QR code, register, and hope to see you there next week in person. All right, we have another event going on at the University of San Diego with our great students. This is called the Fowler Business Concept Challenge. This is going to be Thursday, this week, Thursday, November 9th at 3 o'clock. We would love for you all to attend this. And now you can watch students give their 1-minute pitch, and you'll be amazed. Like, these students are on top of it. So they're going to have our top students. They've been kind of vetted and gated. You know, the top students will pitch. There's going to be networking. We've invited lots of people in the community. So you're going to meet, there'll be investors there, like a great way to meet other people. And then, of course, there's 45,000 scholarships for these students. This is a really good opportunity. It's right across the street in the Kroc Institute. It's right across the street from our Canal School of Business. So if you've been to the Canal School of Business, it's that part of campus. So scan that QR code, register today. Maybe someone can put a link in the chat in case you don't get it in time. So definitely plan on attending that. And of course, I'm still helping out our Village Up partners in the ecosystem. They're doing a survey to every year they're looking at the state of diverse founders in San Diego. So I just want to see how the diversity is changing or growing. And so just if you want to scan the QR code, it should take about 10 minutes. All right, so we are the BRINC SBDC. That's me. I'm the director of the BRINC SBDC. We are part of the Free Enterprise Institute. This is all within the Canal School of Business. And we have a kind of a continuum of student-facing events to community. So that Fowler Business Concept Challenge I was just telling you about, that's completely students. And then the San Diego Angel Conference is for the community. And so is the BRINC. So the BRINC provides advising for founders, free for founders, advising and events. And the San Diego Angel Conference hosts this e-track event, and they have an investor event. And then finally, the pitch competition, which is open to the community like you folks. So it's a great program. We're proud to be part of it. We're all housed in the Canal School of Business. So the BRINC, just a couple words on the BRINC. We provide free and confidential one-on-one advising to help innovative founders access capital to build investable companies. So access capital, revenue growth, and strategy. We are an SBDC. We are one of nearly 1,000 across the country who are housed at the University of San Diego. And so there's our website below. And so we do have 16 advisors that you can meet with nearly immediately. You can have one meeting, you can have multiple meetings. As much as you want someone to talk to, provide you some guidance on how to raise money or how to put your pitch deck together or access an SBIR grant. We've got these great accomplished advisors in their field: biotech, tech, SaaS, AI, healthcare. So it's one of the great benefits that we offer, but there's more. We're part of a network of 11 SBDC centers in the San Diego and Imperial Valley. There's 11 centers. We're up here, you see on the top row, Connect is also an SBDC. Once you kind of move through angel investing, if you want access to VC, we've got Connect there. But we've got an access to over 100 advisors and folks that know loans, right? So we help people with angel investment. Today, I had a client, I have a founder who has raised angel investment, has revenue, and they need a bridge loan. They needed a bridge financing, and she was going to go out and raise money. And I said, you know what? Why don't you meet with one of our finance team and see if a loan might be right for you? And they're going to work on getting an SBA loan. So there's other types of funding, and we can help you learn all about that. And so because we are a big 11 center-wide network, we track our milestones. So throughout our whole network, through the last year, all of those 11 centers have conducted 16,000 counseling hours for 4,500 clients. That's 700 training events with 12,000 attendees. That's why we count. That's why we ask you guys to assign the attendance. So we track that and we report that back to our grant funders. And we also track demographics as well. 45, nearly half are women, and over half are people of color. That includes Asia Pacific, Black, African American, and Latinx and Hispanic. And so over here on the right, in the middle, that's Tara Lynn Gray. She's from California Office of the Small Business Advocate, and she leads the funding, and she's going to be here next week for the pitch deconstruction. We're meeting with her. So overall, our centers have generated over 1 billion economic impact. So very proud of these statistics. So if you want to have free one-on-one advising, once you can have one meeting, you have multiple meetings, scan the QR code and we can get you set up. You do not have to be a Brink client if you want to participate in SDAC. It's just a benefit that we provide because we are funded for economic development in our community. All right, and at least you could do, if you could just follow us on LinkedIn. We're trying to reach that 1,000 follower number. Just scan that or find us on LinkedIn and just click that little follow button. We'd appreciate it. All right, so what is SDAC? SDAC is two parts. There's the E-track, which is this, and then there's the I-track, which is investors. So E-track is a 4-month series of events where we're training founders to put together their pitch so they can apply and be successful in the competition. I-track is where we activate accredited investors in the local community that will pool together their funds and identify 6 finalists, do due diligence, and then select a winner. And that final event is going to be on May 9th. And so if you apply to SDAC, you get a free ticket to that event. And so the application deadline is going to be December 19th. So here's the rundown of, I think there's like 15 events that we're doing here. We are now on the corporate law and product market fit. Tomorrow is going to be or next week will be pitch deconstruction. Yeah, so finally, save that date, May 9th. You might be on stage or you will be in the room watching, but along the way, you will meet investors, you'll meet peers, and you will grow as a founder. All right, so one thing we want to know is, will you be applying for SDAC? We're just curious. You've been coming to these events. Yes, you're going to apply. No, or I don't know yet. That would be maybe. So go ahead and scan that. I'll give a few minutes here, or seconds, I guess. Scan that. Let us know. There's an optional, if you want to tell us your name, you can. You don't have to. It can be totally anonymous. We'd like to know kind of like how many applications we're going to get to review over the Christmas holiday. So, all right. And finally, what's happening tonight? All right, we've got a great lineup for you. I am so excited. We have Vidya Dinamani from Ad Astra Ventures. She's going to talk in like a couple minutes. She's going to talk about product market fit. And then we're going to bring in Kate Dilligan from Cooler Heads for a little like Q&A for 25 minutes or fireside chat to hear how she's addressed the topics that we're talking about tonight. And then we will have Brian Dirkmatt from Coeptus Law, who will talk about legal basics, right? But LLC, C Corp, safes, notes, should you pay yourself? So good topics there. And then we will end with the breakout rooms. We're going to go, I think, if you guys want us to use different segmentation, different themes for the room, let us know in the chat. And then you can talk about the things that we talked about today and maybe get some advice from your peers. So with that, I'm going to introduce Vidya. Vidya, I see you. Yeah, so thank you. Vidya is with Ad Astra Ventures, and she's been part of the with Cooler Heads. She knows Kate Billigan, and Vidya is an expert in product development, product management, and so we'll have a lot of very key information to talk about with product market fit. So Vidya, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Amy. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank you and Misty and Stephen for doing all the sort of behind the scenes work to make this possible. So I've got a talk. I'm going to go through this. It's an hour. I'm going to go through this fast. So it's about half an hour. So we have time for Q&A. And I'm actually wearing, I wear two hats. One is as an investor with Ad Astra Ventures, and the other is working in product. I spend half my life working as a product coach for companies, both from an advisory perspective for some of our portfolio companies, as well as actually coaching companies all the way up from early stage to Fortune 50. We actually just trained 400 product managers at a very large multinational financial services firm. So I say all that by way of just letting you know that I've seen a lot of patterns. I've seen a lot of different products. We wrote a book called Groundwork, Get Better at Making Better Products. And, over 200 companies at various different stages of product market fit. And I can tell you, even those really established companies, as they're thinking about a new feature, as they're thinking about potentially a new innovation, they're back to the same starting point of thinking about product market fit. So as I go through this with you, I want you just to think about, I'm going to focus on one specific area, which is really the foundation for me of product market fit, which is, have you identified? And do you really know that you're solving a really important customer problem? So as I said, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, and I hope we have lots of time for Q&A afterwards. So I know that I'm going to start off with sort of a pretty depressing slide, which is why startups fail. And while this is coming out of 2018, these insights continue to be the first top 2 or 3 sort of change places, but it's like these are always the same type of reasons, roughly in the same order. And if you take a look at them, so many of them, 7 out of these, I think 10, are related to product market fit. So when you run out of cash or you fail to raise capital, it's usually because you haven't proven that you have a product that customers want. If you don't have a market need, if someone else does it better, if your business model doesn't make sense because of the way that you have set up your product in the marketplace, pricing, cost issues, not timing the product right, or just simply not a good product. So these are all the reasons. And so what I want to do is tell you that startups, and again, any company that is thinking about introducing a new product, it takes 2 to 3 times longer to validate the market than you believe it will. And spending time at this really early stage is worth its weight in gold. So don't rush through it. Like, validating product market fit is actually one of the prerequisites for Ad Astra Ventures. You've got to have proven it before we actually invest in you. Unlike probably a lot of investment firms, but this is really key. And you can do this cheaply, you can do this easily. It's all on you. You don't need a ton of resources. You can do this yourself. So what I want to talk to you about is, or what is the key to building better products? Like, where do you start? How do you get to delight? How do you get to having a product that customers actually love? I want to give you an example that we can sort of play along with together. And then, as I said, have time for questions. So I want to start with some examples, right? This is type of customer feedback, and these are all from real products. This is actual quotes from customer feedback. So if you think about, thank you for making this so simple. I'll never have a home without one. This has been a lifesaver, right? Wouldn't you want to have, when your products are out in the marketplace, this is the type of feedback that we really want. So here are the products behind those comments. The first is this little Wise camera. And this is where the thank you for making it so simple. Like, I love this Wise camera. It's a sixth one I've purchased. So Wise is now a much bigger company, but when it started, it created these devices. They're little home cameras, and they're $20. And so just to compare that to some of the really expensive options on the market, and think about sort of the customer feedback. I bought one, I fell in love with it, and I know, look at those words. I fell in love, right? When you use the word love and a product together, you know you're onto something. So that's the first one. This one, second product, I'll never have a home without one, is from Ecobee. It's a Canadian company. They were acquired. They're only about 10 years old. They were acquired recently. And again, here's the word love. I absolutely love this thermostat. It's so easy to use. And I also wanted to give you a B2B. Many of you are not creating customer products like B2C products. So Gusto is a B2B. This is a payroll product. It does some HR software. And look at the words. It's been a lifesaver. It's the best online pay provider I've ever used. We love the ease of use. So all of these products and those common, elements of, I love this product. It's so easy. Thank you for making this product. Now, this is what you want. These all have really high customer satisfaction scores. They have high recommendation scores, and they've grown. Their growth curves are enviable. And all they've done is they focused on these fundamentals. And so this is where I'm going to double down. You're going to hear me say this a couple of times. You got to focus on the core customer problem, because when you focus on the fundamentals, everything else becomes easier. And what I see in companies over and over again is that they sweep past the fundamentals, grab a product, and it's all about development. It's all about features. It's all about marketing. It's all about sales. Like, do I have the right sales team? But they don't have product market fit yet. So what are these three things that all of these companies have in common? The first is the clarity of the customer problem. Now, this sounds really simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do, because there's so many different problems that customers have. And what we tend to do, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, is we tend to think about a solution. We don't tend to talk in the language of problems. And that's one thing. If you take anything away from this 45 minutes, is I want you to start talking in the language of customer problems. So here's the temperature. So Ecobee, what they did was they really realized that the problem that customers were solving is forget about all the issues with thermostats. Fundamentally, in the same room, you can have hot zones and cold zones. And they were like, we're going to address that problem, because that's the actual pain that customers are feeling. It's not the machinery. It's not how to use the thermostat. It's the actual, why do I have a thermostat in the first place? The second thing that these companies have in common is they really understand their customer. And why this is so important is that it's really easy to want to solve problems for everybody. It's really easy to go after demographics. It's really easy to say, oh, I want my customer base to be huge. I want all these segments. I want that rocket ship growth. But here's the trick. In order to have that growth, you need to start uncomfortably narrow. You need to start with one type of customer. And so let me talk about Gusto for a second. So Gusto is an HR payroll provider, but they only serve mom and pop shops. That's how they started. Now, if you think about mom and pop shops, right, they are small. There's probably 1 or 2 employees. And usually they're hiring family, or they're hiring people that soon become family. This is like a really close-knit business. So here's what Gusto introduced. They have a feature that says you can write a thank you note with every paycheck. Now, in any big company, that's ridiculous. Like when you get sort of 200, 500, thousands of employees, no one's going to write a thank you note with each paycheck. But what they knew, because they knew their customer inside and out, for this type of company, for this type of mom and pop shop, saying that little thank you with the paycheck made all the difference. They could recognize accomplishments. They could talk about birthdays. They could just write sort of a simple, I saw you did this. And that really made a difference in a moment of truth that really makes a difference for the employee. Now, again, that feature, no other payroll company would put this in, but Gusto did. The third thing, and this is nuanced, but what they do is they connect a problem with needs. Now, the way to think about this is that when you get bigger, when you grow your company, you're going to have different customers with different needs. Think of them as swim lanes. And what we end up doing, and a lot of teams end up doing, is they try to solve for everybody. And so think about the products that you use, and when they get bloated or when they become hard to use, it's because someone in the product team has been like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this because some customer will want it. Well, the way to get really good at products and to get product market fit is to focus on that customer and focus on that need. And if you're going to introduce a new customer, separate them. Maybe it's a different SKU. Maybe it's a different level of service, but you're not going to mix and merge customers. You're going to think about them uniquely. And so for the last example for our Wise camera, the way they started, they knew that these types of cameras could be used in homes and apartments, like pretty much anyone who wanted home security. But where they started with the first set of needs was the home enthusiast, someone who was technical, someone who could install the camera, someone who liked to geek out on all of this. Now, look at this dashboard. You've got a lot of data. You've got a lot of information. And so what they did was they really started understanding their customer and creating features that met their needs. Now, different versions of the camera have different types of interfaces so that you don't have to have all of this information. They're solving different needs differently. Okay, so, and unfortunately, I'm going to tell you sort of like what we see. And when we go into lots and lots of product teams, all the way from really early stage up to the biggest companies in the world, when it's not working, it's really hard to say no. Now, as an early stage company, you are going to be inundated with advice. You've got people coming in from investors or potential investors. You've got lots of advisors that you have access to. You've got customers, you've got partners, you've got peers. Everyone is going to have an opinion. And it's hard to say no because there's so many good ideas out there. What that means is that you've got way too much to do. There are so many different priorities, and you end up having, if you're building a tech product, way too many priorities. If you're building a healthcare product or a hardware product, like how do you even decide which features go in and out? So lots and lots of priorities. You get stuck in what we call opinion-based debates. People argue, and sometimes the loudest voice, or perhaps it's the biggest investor, but you are sitting there arguing about what you think versus what the customer actually wants. And then what happens is you change your mind, right? Decisions get overturned. People like, and your team, especially if you're developing a tech product, they're sort of swimming in confusion because you're changing your mind because you keep on getting different opinions. Something seems more important. It's hard to say no. And who suffers in the end is your customer, right? You get unhappy customers. And that really is the result of when you don't have product market fit. Okay, so I've sort of set the stage. Hopefully you've got an understanding of like what it takes to focus on the bases. Like, how do you do that? So this is this hopefully is funny and not sort of like painful to see, but this is what people think. And so I want to sort of demystify what step 2 looks like. Like, instead of a miracle, let's like dive into what's under this iceberg. If you're interested in this, like as I said, we wrote an entire book on it. It's about how to think about the problem, how to think about the person, and how to create these pairs. What I want to do is I want to just focus on the very first piece, which is the first step towards product market fit. So every one of you that has entered this room, you're all creative, you're all problem solvers, and you're here sort of saying, I can do this. And when we do that, when we are the types of people that want to create products, we tend to talk about solutions. We hear a problem, we see a problem, and we're immediately thinking about how can we solve this? It's natural. But what that means from a product perspective is that you're talking about features, right? You talk in the language of features. And in order to really start on the right foot with product market fit, you need to think about what is the customer facing? What's the challenge? And it's not enough because it's never one challenge. What you'll see and what I would ask you to do is to explore the number of different problems they have. And so, if for any of you who are design thinking in the audience, we call this divergent thinking. You want to practice divergent thinking. You want to push yourself into exploring and understanding the different problems that there are. And then you want to choose. You want to pick the biggest problem that you are uniquely positioned to be able to solve. So we have a definition of a convergent problem statement. And really the focus here is that it's about not talking about the features or the solution, but just capturing the problem. So let me bring this to life. Now, this is my thermostat at home. I have two of them, and it's pretty ugly. I don't know what any of the buttons mean. It sort of sets, and then we sort of push the up and down button. That's about the extent of it. And that is pretty typical of a lot of home thermostats, right? So let's pretend together we have said, okay, we want to get into the space. We want to build a better thermostat. And so, this is a sort of a typical way that a team might talk or a founder might talk. We don't have any home temperature systems that are really easy to use. So we really want to make something that's much easier. You got to have simple, bold numbers. There's just too much going on in that screen. And we want it to look good, right? We want people to be like, it's a modern sort of looking thermostat. And we want to be able to make it IoT, right? Everyone, it's all smartphone enabled. We've got to make it relevant for the time. Now, a company did just that. They followed that playbook and they created this. This is a real product. You can see that it looks simple. It's pretty attractive. It's simple. It's nice, big, bold numbers. It's smartphone enabled. And then they released it to the market. And these are the results they got. Again, direct quotes from customers. I love the idea, but this thing sort of resets itself and I'm constantly having to monitor it. This thing has ended up costing me money because of a poorly thought out program. Look, there's nothing worse than waking up in the middle of the night in a sweat because it's 87 degrees in the house. So this thing didn't work, right? Now, if you take a look at what we talked about, it was all features. All they did was talk about like things that they had to build to make it like look easy, to make it look simple and bold, to make it iPhone or smartphone enabled. Now, if we say, let's stop that, let's bring our fundamentals and our principles and focus on the problem, the first thing we want to do is to go watch. We want to actually see in real homes what people are dealing with. So this is observational research. This is so simple. You can do this. And what you're looking for is what are all the different problems that people are facing. And so I'm going to give you just some simple ones that we could have explored. They're spending a lot of money on energy, right? This has got nothing to do with the device. But if we ask them about thermostats, they talk about energy. Like the defaults, they don't work, right? Nothing coming out of the box works. Like there's a question, like shouldn't the temperature match the weather? Shouldn't it just be smart enough to do that? We've got the ones that are about device specific. I just can't read this. And then my schedule changes day to day, and so do my heating needs. Lots and lots of different problems, divergent thinking. Now we're going to converge and we're going to pick one problem. And the problem that we keep hearing over and over again as we've done these observations is that it's just never the right temperature in the house. No matter what I do, no matter what I set, it's not just the right temperature. So now let's actually write the problem that we're facing. We've got homeowners, so we've picked a group of people. This isn't apartments. This is a homeowner. They have multiple cold and hot zones in their house. They find it annoying and confusing figuring out how to set the temperature in zones automatically. So they constantly change the thermostat manually. Now, if we look at this, right, and we break down what we're hearing, we've kind of identified a very specific problem. We've talked about how people feel when they experience this problem. We've created a root cause. It's like, why? Why is this problem happening? And we haven't talked about anything to do with the solution. We haven't talked about the device. We haven't talked about what it looks like, what it has to do. We've just created the problem statement. Now, this is why this is such an important part of product market fit, because we watched customers, we understood what they needed, we picked the most important problem, and then we declared it. We wrote it down. So everybody on the team is solving that problem. And that's what Ecobee did. Now, the beauty of Ecobee is that in solving this problem, they realized it wasn't just about the temperature gauge on the wall. What they needed to do in order to get the right temperature in the house was they created these tiny little devices and they placed them around the home. And so what these devices are doing is they're constantly calibrating with each other. And that is what solved the problem. So now you get customer feedback, and this is why they had explosive growth and why they got acquired. My Ecobee reads the temperature in the living room where I sit, and it ignores the temperature in the hall where the thermostat is. They solved the problem. The temperature is right for everybody. That hot zone, cold zone problem was eliminated. And that really is why product market fit starts with identifying, writing down, and clarifying the problem. This is a quote from Theodore Levitt. And many of you have probably seen this before, famous marketing professor out of Harvard in the 40s and 50s. And and this is a quote that gets said a lot. People don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. But what I'll say is, and what we go into more in the book, is, well, what do they want the 1/4-inch hole for? Now, if I'm hanging this little kind of like cute little painting on the wall, that's a very different need than if I'm hanging sort of a 10 by 6 foot painting on my floor to ceiling apartment. So understanding exactly what the customer need is, what they want it for, and declaring this is the problem that we're solving, that's what gets us to designing solutions that make sense and bringing our entire team and our partners and our investors and our advisors along together on the same page. So I want to ask you, and we're going to do a little mini exercise in a second, but I want you to think about, can you write down the real problem that your customer has? And so no matter what stage, whether it's an idea, whether you've started to build something, write down, like, what problem are you solving? And do you know that is true? I want to give you a framework for writing down that problem. And this is going to be, it's a little complex template, but what it will force you to do is to think about every single step that will allow you to articulate the problem without any features or solution. So this is the template, and bear with me. I know there's a lot, but there's sort of like a reason for all of this. So we want to start with a person or a job title, not a demographic, not woman aged between 30 and 50. We want a specific person. Think about, is it an HR manager in a small company? Is it that mom and pop shop? Is it a payroll administrator at a Fortune 500 company? Really think about who it is, be specific. What do they want to achieve? Like, what is the thing that they're trying to get to? And then, this is important, how do they want to feel? When you start actually thinking and articulating these types of filling out this template, this will really help you both empathize and understand your customer. And this will help you with your marketing copy. It will help you with your sales. The goodness just continues on because you know exactly what they're doing and what they're feeling. Tell us what's getting in the way. Like, why is this a problem? Why haven't they solved it? When does it happen? And like, what's the root cause? Like, why is this problem fundamentally happening? So, in other words, specific problem, what's the emotion? What's the root cause? No emotion. Now, I want you to, this is where we play along. I want to tell you a story, and I want you to just like jot down, like, just open up sort of a little note. And jot down what you think is happening here. I want you to actually write down and fill out the template. So this is a case study. This is another one out of Harvard. It's from Clayton Christensen. And he did a study. He was pulled into a famous fast food restaurant. And what happened was their milkshake sales were declining, right? And they had thrown marketing and promotions and all sorts of stuff at this, but nothing was making a difference. Their milkshake sales continued to decline. So they brought Clayton and his team in, and they parked themselves in several of these different fast food restaurants, and they watched who bought the customers. And one particular type of customer surprised them. They found that in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning, sort of early 5-6 o'clock, these nicely dressed people would come in and they'd buy a milkshake and then they go back to their car. And so what Clayton and his team did was to say, can we kind of follow along and watch? And so they started to see these nicely dressed people who were driving for 30, 40, 50 minutes, drinking these milkshakes. And they were drinking them early in the morning. They were heading to their work. They were nicely dressed. And I want you to think about, so I think I've given you sort of all the clues for some of the template, except for the root cause. I want you to kind of like come up with a hypothesis as to why. Why were these folks early in the morning doing this? So anyone want to go off mute and sort of give it a shot? Want to be brave and say what the template might be?
They were bored.
Yeah.
Okay, boredom. Okay, what else?
They were hungry for something with calories that's quick.
Love it. Hungry for calories, for something that was quick. Okay, one more.
They wanted something that would
They were
last a long
commuting
time.
for work, therefore they were looking for something to keep them company.
Love it. Company, looking for something that took some time. I love it. Like you've all sort of like, you could have been there with Clayton and his team. So here's what they found. Here's the problem statement. So we have these road warriors. They're like, they're on the road. They've got long commutes, and they want to make it bearable. This is a long time, and they want to not be starving when they get to work. But what's happening is there's very limited options. Like they've got to show up nicely. And when you're driving, it's hard to sort of eat something and not make a mess. I think we've all been there, right? It happens every morning on their way to work. And it's because traditional breakfast foods are hard to eat when you're driving. So now that they understood this, right, this was just one of the problems they uncovered. They uncovered different ones in different times. But here's what the fast food restaurant did. And if we had a little bit longer, I would love to have sort of like made this a bit more of a conversation, but I'm just going to cut to the chase and tell you. What they did was, now that they knew this problem, they started to add a few more healthy options. They actually increased the width of the straw and started to put little bits of fruit. And so that you had a little bit more, like whoever said boredom, they actually had like something to chew on as well. It took even longer to consume this. So milkshakes took a nice long time. Now they took longer. Now they actually had healthy options. And by doing this, their milkshake sales went up. They did a couple of other things with different kind of like places in the journey when they discovered what was happening. But this was a big one for early in the morning. So I want to summarize that. Like they observed, right? They watched, they listed all the problems. They understood exactly the job that this milkshake was hired to do. I'm going to say that again, because there's a whole set of study around jobs to be done, which we could spend another 45 minutes on. But think about your product as solving a problem. Someone is hiring your product to do a job. If you can understand exactly what job that is, or what job they want filled, that is the first step to identifying the problem and getting towards product market fit. Now you can start playing with solutions. Now you can start doing some A/B testing. You can try some different sort of iterations of your product. You can do concepts and so forth and so forth. But it starts with understanding the problem. So I think I did it. Oh my gosh, I got through that in half an hour. It's like that's crazy. So I want to pause and open it up for questions.
Yeah, so how about if you raise your hand and then we can kind of get a cue. That might be a little more orderly. But Vidya, I love the milkshake one. I've seen that before. And it's funny, there's a video on YouTube if you guys Google it, and he's like such a scientist. I had to solve this milkshake problem, and it's like such a great example. So, okay, we have Jeff Gottschalk. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I want to say that was awesome and great job. And I did the exercise and it was really helpful. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I know that Stephen's got the template for the problem statement that he's going to share with you all. So you can actually kind of like, if you didn't get a chance to grab a picture or to look at it, there's a couple of sort of cheat notes on how to use it. So yeah, and we use this with teams, hundreds of product managers, hundreds of teams. I love that. Thank you so much.
I have a question.
So if everyone use the raise hand function below, and then we'll know they'll put you in the queue. That's a digital hand. So next we have Zachary Love. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Howdy. Just a little bit of commentary on how we apply this uncomfortably narrow initial target market to our TAM Samsung analysis that ultimately we're going to talk about our grand ideas.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So when you're doing your pitch, what you want to do is you want to build out, because you'll have a vision for where your product will be and all the different segments and all the different customers. And so that is your addressable market. That's what you want to kind of identify. I'm talking about where do you start with proving product market fit and what do you build? So you want to separate out what you paint the picture of the vision of where you're going to be and the market that is potentially yours for the taking, and then what percentage you'll take, and your roadmap, which is all the different steps that you'll take to get there. This is the beginning of your roadmap. This is the beginning of where you start, because you're going to start with the most important customer problem. And I'll tell you just with the milkshake example, and I love that, Amy, like if you just look up Clayton Christensen and milkshake, he tells it like incredibly better. I mean, he did the research. It's a wonderful story. But he also identified, like, in the afternoon with kids coming in, and what they did was they made those milkshakes much, much smaller, right? And so it's easy, and moms didn't feel bad for buying this like huge milkshake before dinner. So there's so many different things. So your total addressable market is where you can get to, differentiate it from where you start building. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Thank you. And I've got Clayton's book right here.
Oh, awesome. Well, so say you do your product market fit. I think this is what he was maybe asking about. And then like you have the small little market, and then is that your beachhead, or how do you like, well, how do I make this a fundable enterprise?
Well, I mean, I think that based on what you learn, you've got to think about where this market is going. Now, I'll give you the example of one of the ones that I chose. We've got the little Wise camera, where they started was uncomfortably narrow, because what they did was they made it pretty technical. They didn't want to hire a bunch of service people. They didn't want to be able to they wanted people to be able to do it themselves. And installing a camera, I think these days, like 2023, much easier. If you go back sort of 10 years, not as straightforward, especially when you had sort of like the connection to web pages and so forth. So they said, we're going to start with a really small technical group of people, and that's people that are comfortable installing. They're going to troubleshoot themselves. They're going to install this thing themselves. They don't need help. That doesn't mean to say they made the product easier and easier to the point where anyone can now sort of out of the box, stick it on the wall, it works. But that required investment, it required time, it required new features, and that's where they didn't want to start. So what I would say, Amy, that's one piece of this in terms of building out the roadmap. The second is if you actually discover that the problem isn't ubiquitous, it isn't addressable by lots and lots of different types of customers, then you've got to make a choice. Maybe you want to actually solve this problem, build a smaller business, take less investment, and you don't need to get a ton of money to build a really nice business for yourself. So I wouldn't let that discourage you, but what you want to do is to say, is this problem experienced by many people? And then where do I start? that is a investment ready business, because now you need money to be able to actually get to the market, build the new products and so forth.
Great. I love that. Okay. So next up we have Danny. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Vidya, for that really good presentation. So, and I'm sure you see this all the time, every day. So, you know, especially in the software space, people can make something because they can, right? It's a really cool software, cool features, all this stuff. And then part of the problem is, okay, now we have to we know it's really cool. Now we have to kind of figure out what's the problem or who would use it. And they get that question all the time. So maybe you can discuss some exercises, like, because it's kind of a little bit of both. You have to know you can make it, right? You have to know that technology is possible. And then you have to kind of jump over here and start thinking, okay, well, how can we use in the market, and then jump back, you know? So maybe you can discuss some exercises in place for if someone does have a really cool technological thing that, and people are asking, well, how are you going to use it?
So you might not like this answer, Danny, but I would say pretty much anything can be built. And as an early stage investor, I see a lot of products that technically they still haven't figured out how they're going to do it yet. And so starting with the problem is always the most important thing, because the fact that you have a cool technology or you can build something in search of a problem is, I've never seen that work effectively, because we talk ourselves into wanting the market to be bigger or wanting customers to want to have it. And there's a lot of sort of aspirational sort of like needs, requirements that users will have. And what I mean by that is that people will tell you what you want to hear. They'll want to be nice to you. They'll say, yes, 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 that sounds great. If you provide a solution, doesn't mean they're going to buy it. What you want to hear is like, this is a huge pain. I have tried different things. I will pay for this problem to go away. That's when you get product market fit, because you have to identify that a real need and a real problem. And I will say that you can pretty much solve anything technically. And Kate's coming on soon. I mean, there's lots of sort of technical things that she didn't know how to do when she first went on this, but she knew that she had a really important customer problem. And so for any company that we work with, when they have a cool technology, or if they have a cool technology, we still are like, you got to go back to first principles, go back to talking to the customers that you believe, the prospects that you believe will need this, and really truly learn without putting your technology or your solution in front of them. They have got to express the problem without knowing that there's necessarily a solution. Sorry, Danny.
No, that's a good answer. I'm just saying that, like, if you kind of have the inkling that you can innovate here,
yeah,
it narrows down the conversation when you go to talk with customers about what the problem is. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit of, you have to, it's in a way useful to know that you want to innovate here, and then go talk to people about that problem set, and then perhaps it can inform the other. But thank you very much.
Yeah. And I would say, I would just try, and I think you can innovate around anything. And I think that what you're talking about is, am I the right person? Do I have the skills? Do I have the innovation? Do I understand this technology area? When you take a look at a problem, but if you can identify the different types of problems, and you've uncovered something really important, then you want to apply sort of your technology lens on it, is the way I do it.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vidya, what I also heard, what I want to echo, is that the comments you get when you do customer discovery and how to distinguish between, yeah, that sounds great, sure, yeah, I'll buy it, versus I can't live without this.
Yeah.
The team can go like, yeah, everybody said they liked it, so yeah, we're going full speed ahead. So I think that little kind of very slicing, is really key, because we want to hear it's the best thing, but if I can't live without it, that was pretty cool. So, okay, we got next in line, we have Miles.
And just before we get to Miles for 1 second, I'll say, I've been guilty of this. I'm coming from experience. I've built products that I'm like, well, customers absolutely have told me they want this. There is a need. And I'll give you one, and so this is something that we want to hear. We've got to pull ourselves back from it. And it's the best way to do it is to just have open-ended questions. Don't show a solution. Don't give them a demo. Don't talk about your features or product at all. Just explore the area. Tell me more about how do you do this? Like, what does it look like when? Explore the edges of the sort of problem space that you have with open-ended questions and see if they narrow in on something that you've got a hypothesis that the right problem. Sorry, Miles.
No, it's been great. I think I'm in engineering services like B2B, and I'm having a hard time, hearing the biggest customer problems. So I really like the way you put it. When we're talking about these kind of customer products, I think it's a bit more clear. But I'm sitting in a perspective where we've got a bunch of capabilities, and I'm trying to really dial in and focus on one area of growth. I don't know if you've got anything to elaborate on, like how to listen for that biggest customer problem. Maybe it is those open-ended questions with the customers that you've worked with for a while. Maybe there's something else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a couple of techniques that you can try. Open-ended questions is great for exploring and just asking. But if you've got a set of features or you've got a set of potential features, get your customer to rank them. Right. I mean, you can do them, literally stack rank them, say, can you just put these in order of like what your biggest need is? And then you can sort of like just talk about ask them to sort of tell you why the top 3 are ordered that way. The other way that you can do it is you can put it in a bullseye. If they're not comfortable, you don't have enough time to go through every single one. Kind of like, again, put your features or your ideas on stickies. Put 3 sort of concentric circles in terms of boring, and then say you can only get 1 in the middle. You get sort of 2 on the outer ring, and then 3 in the outer. So 1, 2, 3, and then everything else is like out. And that's a really fun visual way, because then what you'll see and what you want to watch and observe is like, what are they playing with? Which 2 are they like, oh, is that number 1 or is that number 2 or number 3? So you're watching and listening, and then you can ask the questions. Why were you debating which one was the most important? And you can learn so much when you get your customer to actually tell you versus you having to come up with a set of questions. That's a beautiful way of like just getting inside their heads, and they don't even know that they're doing it.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we have Valeria.
Hi, thank you for your presentation work. I have a question. First version, actually prototype of my tool, I offered to New York City government, and it was successfully tested. The question is, can I consider government agency as customers, or it's very difficult area to,
In government agencies, you can. The process, but if you've got a commitment from a government agency, then absolutely. I think it's just the way that they work, that understanding their process, understanding who the decision makers are, because that I think is the most complicated, because a lot of times, B2C is easy, right? You've got one buyer. B2B is a little bit more complicated, because you might have a user, a buyer, you might have an approver, you might have procurement. You've got to go through some hoops. The government, depending on which level, like state, federal, which department, just understanding the sort of the chain of command and who actually is allowed to write the check and what you need to go through, that's what you need to understand. And then if you go to another department, is it the same? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. So yes, absolutely, you can understand that. The level of complexity tends to be higher, but once you're in subsequent sales, and especially if it's like it's an oversight department and you've got multiple branches, then it becomes super easy, because you've already got that sign off, and now you can actually start kind of bringing people on board much faster.
I have an idea, because like I say, first version of my tool was offered to HRA, Human Resource Administration, New York. But I don't know, I was, brought by different company, and then I offered them the solution of their great problems. And actually my tool could be used in different areas. It's decision tree web forms, but it was built for for government. So I just don't know the way to make government my clients. And if you can suggest me some help, I don't know.
Well, you know, a couple of companies that have government departments or the DoD as their clients, as I said, it's a much longer ramp. But once if they've actually bought your product, then you want to ask for an endorsement. You want to ask for a letter of recommendation. You want them to be a referral. So when you go to the next government department, you've got all of this, like we've already worked, we've already been proven, and here's the person to talk to. And again, because of that connection, I would get your assets for your sales assets set up so that you have sort of proven yourself with one department, so it's not cold call, because they're much more connected than regular businesses and consumers.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and Valeria, we have in our 11 center network, our center out of Miracosta actually specializes in government contracting. So I will circle back with you, and we can maybe find a connection there that might be able to provide some additional.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so we are at 6:30. We're going to take one more question because Melissa's up with her hand, and then we're going to the break is now, and then we're going to bring on Kate. But go ahead, Melissa.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. You're an amazing speaker, and I loved it. I can't wait to listen again and really take a little bit more time with it. My question, I put my hand up, put it down, put it up, put it down. My question is really on something that you said about how that uncomfortably narrow focus, and you talked about the biggest need for me in my industry. The greatest need is smaller numbers. So in terms of revenue, the greatest need is going to bring in less revenue. So there's more revenue with larger people, and that's the thing that keeps pulling me back and forth. And do you have any thoughts on that?
So if I hear what you're saying, you're like your target, there's a small group of people with a really like strong need, but your revenue numbers are not as strong as if you went for the bigger ones that have less need, but there's a potential bigger revenue upside there.
Right.
But like, hear what you said, like if they don't have the big need, how do you know they're going to buy your solution? Whereas if you go to the small one, you get the revenue, you start building it, you become indispensable, then other people are going to pay attention. Always start with the strongest need, and you can build out from there. You chasing someone who's potentially a bigger revenue target but doesn't actually have the need, you know, they'll be like they can keep you hanging forever. So
right. I would say it's not like they don't have a need. They have a need, but for a very small group of people, it's life. It's the impact on their lives is much greater.
And so, you know, I would go after that. The only other thing that I would do is if you went to both of these types of prospects and you talked about willingness to pay, because really product market fit, the combination, I talked about where to start. And so once you've identified the problem,
right,
and you've identified the right customer, you've put a solution together, the piece that makes it like PMF is willingness to pay.
Yeah.
And so if you can get letters of intent, or you can get approvals or actual sort of checks from your bigger companies, then great, go after them. But
right,
you know, that's where I would say the trade-off is. It's like, go to each of them, and like if they've got a real pain and it's huge, even if it's a smaller revenue target, but they're willing to pay for it,
right,
you're onto something. And
right,
now you can actually sort of like get your product to a place where the bigger companies can pay attention. But if your bigger companies are willing to pay because it's a big enough need, then go for it. That's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I love that. That's like how do you get traction sooner, right? Who's going to be willing to pay? They have which means they have the biggest need. So great advice. Thank you, Vidya. Let's give Vidya a round of applause. How do we do that? We go to our reactions. Let me try it. Yay! So, but if you want to stay on the stage, then we are going to bring up Kate. I saw her come in the room. I have to make my hand go away. How do I do that? Okay. Kate is here.
I am here.
Yes. Okay. How do I stop clapping? Click it. Oh, exit. Okay. No, now I have the no button. Sorry. All right. Anyway, I'll figure.
Kind of funny.
That's awesome,
I
Amy.
feel like my mother. Okay, let's focus on Kate. So we have Kate and we have Vidya. So Vidya, if you want to stay on the stage, because so Kate Filligan is the founder of Cooler Heads, and she was at SDAC 1, has a great story, I think, of why that was a great experience for her. But she's come along to do so many great things. We were just at her open house a couple months ago. So Kate, why don't you, if you could give us a little bit of a little bit about you, and then we'll ask you a little bit of questions about your product pivot and how you found product market fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kate Tilligan, the CEO and founder of Cooler Heads. And, like a lot of people these days, I've had a couple of careers. I was a liberal arts major. I worked in politics, but then I went to Stanford Business School and worked in tech. And then in 2016, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it became very clear to me throughout almost a year of really arduous treatment that there's a huge disconnect in American healthcare between the care that you get from your medical team to treat your disease. But then when it comes to side effect management, you are on your own. And it's Dr. Google, Dr. Amazon, and Dr. Facebook, which are not reliable sources of information. So what we do at Cooler Heads is we build the evidence-based products, content, and services that cancer patients and survivors need to manage really the often most daunting side effects of treatment. And our first product, AMA, is allowing us to help for most patients with solid tumors, eliminate hair loss from chemotherapy. It's a class 2 medical device cleared by the FDA in 2000. At the end of 21, we did a soft launch summer of 22. We can talk a lot about product market fit, working with your earlier customers, deciding to go to lower paying customers first and early to get that really valuable feedback before you then go to bigger customers. And now we're going to do over $1 million in revenue this year. We have a really small sales team. We're still considered a seed stage company. We're actually getting ready to kick off our A. And we have deals with the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Wellstar in Georgia, McKesson. We've now sold to 2 VAs. And, one of the things that I'm most proud of, and it's kind of funny, I was reviewing this data with our head of clinical just yesterday. Over 96% of patients that have used AMA would, 5 out of 5 recommend it to somebody else. And there was one person that was a 4, and there's one person that was a 3. But like the vast majority of our patients want to use the product and would recommend it again. And we're a B2B play. We sell it to infusion centers where we make it accessible to patients. So happy to dig in or delve into any of that detail.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And so we've got Vidya just talked about product market fit. And then after this, Brian Dirkmatt from Coeptis will talk about like some of the legal decisions you had to make. But let's start with product market fit. So did you start with something you had in mind, that you had some information that would be the fit, and then did you have to change it?
So like a lot of entrepreneurs, I experienced a problem that was just so egregious. I was like, okay, well, this is terrible and nobody should ever have to go through this again. So I'm going to build something better. So I was using a solution to keep my hair during chemo that wound up costing me more than $8,000. I had the person who's supposed to administer it for me quit the day before chemotherapy twice, which caused like all kinds of stress and bringing people down from LA. It was really, really terrible. So I had very strongly in my head, having been the patient, what I wanted for a solution to allow patients to keep their hair during chemo that was really patient focused. And really the way I shifted over time is, NVIDIA, you will remember this very, very well. We were originally going to build this product and we were going to have a 1-to-1 ratio where we would be selling or renting these machines directly to patients. So any patient could have access to this therapy. Well, the thing that we realized, and as the reimbursement landscape has changed, this is, an example of getting lucky as an entrepreneur, is we realized we could structure our business model in a way that would make this profitable for infusion centers to offer it to patients. So rather than just having highly motivated patients doing the direct to consumer thing, and, you're marketing then to 330 million people, right? Because you don't know who's going to get cancer, who's going to need access to this product. Our our unfair advantage is we're selling to infusion centers, and over 80% of our infusion centers have never offered a version of this therapy before. So we're demonstrating that we're growing the market, because when we really dug into what are the things that the infusion centers don't want. So to explain this very quickly, the therapy that we use takes place before, during, and for several hours following treatment. And there are systems that are on the market that also address this problem, but they tie up the infusion chair for all of those hours after the infusion chair. And if you're an oncology line manager, you make $16,000 every time a patient sits down. So basically losing one infusion a day is hugely expensive for you. Plus, you've only built the number of chairs for your patient population, and your job is to make sure people get chemo. Well, we have a portable system. So when patients are done with their chemo and they have several hours of our therapy left for symptom management, they go to the waiting room, they go to the atrium, they go get coffee, they go someplace else. So our huge value add, well, there's three. We don't change patient workflows. You never, ever, ever want to change patient workflows in healthcare. We offload the nurses. We are so much less stress on the nurses than the legacy systems, and we're way more affordable for patients. We're really democratizing this. And so really understanding, because originally I was patient focused, but realized the way I can make our company venture backable, the way that's actually going to get, venture and significant, individual investors excited, was to show that we can sell it to infusion centers, and that, we have a razor blade model that can really start scaling the business. And that's what we've proven in this first year of commercialization. And just for all you early stage founders, I started this company in 2018, and we got our first sale last fall. So it's, and then this year we're going to do $1 million $1 million plus in revenue this calendar year. So it's been a long slog.
So, I mean, I want to jump into the question here, because what the thing that we just talked about, Kate, was, in terms of product market fit and really understanding the problem, you had such a clear idea of the user problem. How did you go about, as you talked about these infusion centers, did you go in and observe? How did you learn about these needs around the infusion center? I think, can you just unpack that process of how you discovered this?
Yeah, I spent, I used we've all got networks involved. I was part of Ad Astra really early on, and was, an SDAC, participant. And so build out your network so you can get in front of those people. I have an undergraduate degree in history. I do have a Stanford MBA, but before I founded this company, I was working in the intelligence community. So I was working in an entirely different field. So I went back to my, political skill set, and how do you network to find your way into these people? So I leveraged my Stanford network. I leveraged the San Diego Entrepreneur Network, and just started talking to physicians and saying, hey, how would this impact your nursing team? And then a lot of times they'd let me talk to the nursing team. And interestingly enough, a lot of those oncologists are now on our cap table. They're investors. They're like, oh, well, if you can do this, that really is a game changer.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience. Mark, you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. Thanks for this, because I think this is a really good example of solving a problem for a patient, but that's not where the money's coming from. So like Danny was talking about earlier, software engineers come up and solve problems all the time. They're usually scratching an itch that they have, as opposed to an itch that somebody else has. And then they have to spend some time to go find, well, who's going to pay for me to solve that problem? Who's going to pay to scratch that itch? And this is a really good example of that, where you're actually going out, you're the one experiencing the problem to begin with, but you're basically finding out who's willing to pay to solve that problem. And one of the things I'm kind of curious about this is, in your journey and as you were learning, did you did you look at other metrics for the success of this particular tool? So obviously you're decreasing the amount of time spent in an infusion center, decreasing the amount of time spent in terms of nursing. Is there any advantage to the payer? If the patient is able to have faster recovery times, is that something that a payer is willing to pay for?
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing, 10% of chemo patients refuse chemo because they don't want to lose their hair. And this isn't a women thing. So just last week, we got in coming on our website from a 71-year-old man in Shreveport, Louisiana, that bastion of liberalism, saying that he was diagnosed with stage 2B pancreatic cancer and didn't want anybody to know. So wanted to know how he could get access to AMA. So not only are we getting patients into treatment faster, we're also increasing adherence to treatment. Something that a lot of people will think is crazy. I mean, I thought it was crazy that 10% of chemo patients refused chemo, but then look at the number of tragic, unnecessary deaths from people who refuse to get the COVID vaccine, and so people do not make rational decisions about their health, and depression in cancer patients is tied to poorer outcomes. So we are working on demonstrating a lot of that. And we're actually working on building partnerships with pharma as a companion device, because again, not only can we get adjuvant and neoadjuvant patients into cytotoxic chemo more quickly, but then we can also help metastatic patients stay on chemo longer, because there are many metastatic patients that when they're told their disease has progressed to the point that they have to go back on chemo, a lot of them just go, peace out, I'm done. But we actually have a healthy number of metastatic patients that are now using AMA, and they're going to be on AMA for the rest of their lives. But they're prepared to do that because then they can go to their family event, to their friend's party, and not feel othered.
Right. Thanks.
And so back to what you were saying about, the software engineer, like software engineers wanting to solve problems for software engineers. But like as somebody in my old life who used to manage software engineers are expensive. So how do you make their jobs easier? Or how do you make lower level people who are less expensive more effective? Like there's always a way to, a lot of times there's a way to frame it, and you have to look at a problem from a bunch of different angles.
Right.
That's
Thank you.
So did you end up doing customer discovery with all these different decision makers or different customer segments?
Yeah, I did actually. And when Video was talking, I thought very briefly about trying to bring up some old PowerPoints I have that we have pictures of, because we literally had people write out things that they wanted, or we'd have pre kind of populated some Post-it notes. And we did this with, infusion nurses and with patients, and have them say, pick up the 4 that are the most important to you. And I have pictures of that. And do you know what you do when you do that? You shut up. You don't lead the witness. Because, for me, I was the patient, right? And so actually, as a female founder, and Vidya and Amy can talk about this, there's a lot of bias against female founders. And I was told by investors, well, you're just solving a problem that you wanted to have solved. And I'm like, isn't that what most entrepreneurs are supposed to do? Solve a problem? But because it's something that I experienced, I wanted to validate it and make sure that other people saw the problem the same way. So that was a really important part of the early work that we did.
I mean, I also, I think you talked about the infusion, but you also hung out in so many forums. You listened to so many patients. I mean, I'll tell you, Kate is incredible at listening and doing exactly what she just said, which is set up the conversation and then just listen for those insights. And it's so important, because there's a time for selling, but trying to get to product market fit, you're not selling anything, you're just learning. So how hard was it, Kate, to be in that, I want to tell you about my idea, but I'm not going to, I'm just going to listen. Can you just kind of express that, because that is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's excruciating. And, a piece of it, Vidya gave me this advice, when I was working with her at Astra, and it was another entrepreneur that said, you have product market fit when people won't let you leave the room without you're giving them the product, or saying, well, how do I get it? Like that's when you know. And you have to be quiet. And for me, because I had to build, I was a solo female founder building a med device company, and I'm not an electrical or a mechanical engineer by training. And so I had to bring different stakeholders into those conversations. So it bolstered my credibility when I could have a key investor, a Crystal McKellar, who Vidya knows, who is, my first lead investor, or, engineers who became really close advisors and a lot of times wound up investing themselves, listening to these patient stories, saying things on their own that isn't me. Because when you're like, we were one of our sales team, the woman who runs the Northeast for us, she was talking about this call that she had with a healthcare system in Buffalo, and in a follow-up email between, our sales rep, the person, and one person at the account who was going back and forth with one of her colleagues, like this woman who met with Caitlin Galvin starts talking about our value prop and being like, no, this is why we're going to go with cooler heads. It's the portability. It's their patient training. It's this, it's this, it's this. And so Galvin doesn't have to say anything. She just sits back. And so like, once your customer starts telling you why your product is important, shut up and let them sell for you.
That is true. Once you've made the sale, talk about baseball, the weather.
Yeah. And I mean, and the thing is like, we have this whole vision about how we're going to use AMA and expand its capabilities. And so guess what? Like, we go back to those customers and ask them. It's like, so, we're looking at a digital experience with chemo teaching and some other things to offload nurses. We're looking at some other ways that we could design AMA where it'd be even easier. And we continue to engage with our customers. And so they feel like they're part of the team. And so they're more excited to work with us. Because I mean, we went commercial with a minimum viable product. Like, so you have to, especially with the hardware, well, I would imagine the same thing with any kind of product, whether it's software or CPG or what have you, but like, you're going to cut off parts of the baby that you really, really loved. And so, like, AMA's awesome and it's better than what's out there, but it's very much a minimum viable product. And we have this whole roadmap of how we're going to make it better. And we're continuing to do that process though. So we build the things that'll make our customers the most excited to continue to promote it to their patients.
Okay, we have a question from Bernice. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I was wondering, when you're in that space, in that room, and you're trying to collect information about, is this product something people want? How are you documenting that you did do this research? Like, how would you put that down on paper? And are you collecting any particular information that you're, quantifying?
Yeah. So, for us, there's a couple of different ways. Like, there would be, like, for a lot of my physician interviews that I did really early on, I had a set list of, I think it was like 20 questions that I tried to get down, and I would take notes and try to like capture like what their answers were. So then when, and this is like super early stage, but then when investors will be like, prove to me that you said that, prove to me that medical oncologists view this as a problem. And so I would ask, med oncs, like, what is your opinion of scalp cooling? And the majority of them were like, well, for those patients that it works, it's just way too expensive and our nurses hate doing it. And so would have kind of different versions of that I could then show to potential investors or potential stakeholders. I mean, people could always accuse you of lying or whatever, but like, it's a lot of work to go through. And it would just be really counterproductive to do it that way. So, I mean, we also would do mail out surveys, and actually, like the data that I was talking about, how, over 96% of our patients would recommend AMA, would give it the strongest possible recommendation. We send every single patient a post, chemotherapy survey about us that, about a third of them are filling out. We want to increase that. So we're going to give people a $10 Starbucks gift card so we can continue to get more data, because it's such a valuable feedback for us to get.
I'll just add a couple of things. And Kate's on all of these. bring someone with you to take notes, take
Or record
pictures,
it, yeah.
take
Yeah.
recordings. Yeah, bring the customer into the room, which is incredible for investors. And Kate, you've done all of those things.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and especially with, in healthcare, there are companies you can work with that will go out and recruit people if, this is a hard group of people to find. And it's not as expensive as, I mean, it's money, but like there's like some recruiting firms that we've had to use in the past to pay people, 50 or $100 a person. And then, the person knows that they're coming to be interviewed and they don't really have an agenda. It just depends on the field that you're in.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience or video?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, there you go. Get the audience to
Got
it. 'Cause
questions.
I
Go
could
ahead,
ask a
Melissa.
question to Kate all day. So go ahead.
All right, Melissa.
All right. I want to say thank you too. I mean, like this tonight has just been amazing. And Amy, what you guys provide is really, I keep thinking this is free. This is free. How is this free? So thank you. Thank you. But I also want to say too, that like, this is something that you're really passionate about, has a lot of grand meaning to you. And then you're working on solving this problem and the money comes, you're going to find the right people. I think that just keep continuing to talk about what you have. It clearly is important to other people too. You're, like you said, you're not the only one. So I guess I just want to say thank you because you give me something, you give me a lot of hope. I really do. I hope that in 5 years that I'll be where you are, or less than 5 years, I'll be where you are and saying, don't give up.
Melissa, I really hope it is less than 5 years. And the advice that I give to all early stage entrepreneurs is listen to the feedback of the people that said no. Some people say no just because they would say, no to the Pope or no to kids on Halloween, right? There's some people who are just going to say no. But if you start to hear, trends of reasons why, take that into consideration, especially as a woman. It is harder to raise money. It is harder to do all of these things. And so, always be willing to challenge your assumptions. And it's so valuable. Like all of you that are here that are listening to other people who have been there, done that, to Amy, to Vidya, to the amazing legal experts that they have, like build these relationships and have people in your corner. They don't necessarily have to be an investor or stakeholder, but have people that can pressure test it for you and that can tell you in a very safe way, like, this isn't working. This isn't going to land. Like, you need to change this. Or have you thought about the way that you frame that? I cannot tell you the number of people who told me that this was a problem that nobody cared about.
Okay,
people. I would get off in early investor calls in tears because people would tell me, nobody cares. You're just solving a problem for rich ladies.
Wow. And
again, that 71-year-old gentleman in Shreveport, there's a member that's very prominent in San Diego city government who's a gentleman. People don't know he's sick because he used AMA, and that was very important to him to remain public while he was going through treatment. Like, you also just have to be willing to take it in the gut. And so also build relationships with other founders, because you need those other people who are in the trenches to talk to and to text late at night when you've just had a really tough day, when you've gotten to know that you really didn't want. Like, you really need to build, I'm sure everybody here has, a wonderful personal life, but, build a relationship with other founders, whether they're in your industry or not, of people who can help lift you up, because it sucks and it's hard. And you need those people to talk to, whether it's, outside people or other founders who have been in your shoes. Don't do this on your own. You can't. Like, well, maybe you can. I could not. So I'm not going to say that for anybody else. I certainly could not.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we're going to take, we have the breakout rooms for us to all meet each other. We're going to take one more question from Garrett, and then we will go to our break.
The impact you mentioned is great, but I had a question about like your initial ideation. Was there any like pivoting that you did? I think you kind of touched on it a little bit. Did you like have the original problem and you just like went and ran with it, or was there any kind of circling back?
So we're solving the problem I wanted to solve, which was, having a portable solution for scalp cooling. So chemo patients could have an affordable way to keep their hair. Business model has totally changed. The design of the product has totally changed. The way we're selling it has totally changed. So there's a lot of things about it that has changed, but it was always my North Star, that I believe that where we should start in this whole like building a company around cancer side effect management, that you have to start with the side effect that the sickest patients fear most and use that as our moat to grow from.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to give a big round of applause for Kate and Vidya. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Kate. I know she's busy. She's got client meetings in the evening, so I really appreciate you taking the time and to share your experience and your advice with our founders. So we're going to take, it's going to be a 4-minute break. We'll come back here at 7:05, and then we will have Brian Dirkmatt from Coeptis talk about some legal things. So have a nice break. All right, it's 7:05. Can't go too far. So I see we have Brian. Welcome back, everybody. So We've got a really good lineup tonight. It was great to hear Vidya talk about product market fit and a real life experience from Kate. And now we have Brian Dirkmatt from Coeptus. He is in the house. Saw him come in. So he is, Brian runs his law firm is Coeptus. They work with early stage founders, help them get started. He's been a sponsor of the San Diego Angel Conference for some time, and he's also a sponsor of New Fund Venture Group too. So very experienced working with founders, knows the kind of trouble founders can get in, and we'll probably share some of these stories tonight. So Brian, where are you?
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you. And do you have slides, or how do you want to go?
I do, yeah. Let me fix my camera. Yeah, let me pull up my slides. Hold on just a second. Share screen, right? That'll work.
Do you have access to share screen? Permission?
I
Yes,
think
he
so.
does. All right, take it away, Brian.
Let's first turn this into the proper presenter view. That's, nope, slideshow. There it is. All right, well, thanks for inviting me to speak, Amy and Misty and everybody else organizing the San Diego Angel Conference and the Brink. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. I actually really enjoyed doing this. I also realized that I'm the last speaker after, I think, a good amount of time already on this call. So I'm between you and sleep. And what better to put you to sleep than a boring lawyer? So I'll try to make this a little more fun and interesting. Hopefully I'll tell you information that's new, maybe even surprising. And if perhaps controversial or disagree, I'd love the debate and the questions. So please bring it on. Amy provided a little bit of background. I'm a co-founder of a boutique law firm here in San Diego called Coeptus Law. We've been around for about 5 years. But before that, I've been practicing law quite a bit. I've been practicing for 22 years now. 8 years was in Silicon Valley, and then came back down to San Diego in 2009, and then formed this firm in 2017. And the whole time we've been representing startup companies, founders, investors, early stage formation, a lot of early stage financing, M&A exits, protection of IP, and other things related to that. So what we're talking about today, I've been doing for a good long time. And again, hope you get good new information and maybe even surprising information. I hope to end in about 25 minutes. So I do have a good number of slides, but I'm hoping to be rather cursory in the presentation, and then maybe leave more room for Q&A. That's where the more of the fun is in Q&A. So we wanted to start out talking about why form an entity, what kind of entity, how many shares issue to founders, what about vesting, what about service providers, how do you treat them, and then some discussion about early stage financing and things interwoven in there. So I'll start with forming an entity. And the first question is why you even need to form an entity. I had a client for a while that was generating about $3 million in annual revenue, and they did not have an entity formed. They were operating as a sole proprietor, which is rather surprising, but it emphasizes the point that you actually don't need to form an entity to do business. But there are some really good reasons why you should, and this lists several of them. It's really good, even when you're early stage with several co-founders. It really helps to consolidate the ownership of the IP and what you're doing into an entity. Also, it creates clarity about ownership and your roles. So the sooner you do that, your co-founders all know what you're doing. I put this phrase, putting things in writing is, quote, friendly. I've over the years, I've come across a lot of folks who say, oh, we're really good friends and we don't really need to formalize with writing because we just want to keep this friendly. And I've seen the opposite actually occur, that when things are not in writing is when real disputes happen. So I think putting things clearly in writing is actually more friendly. And then, of course, there's other really good reasons, tax benefits, outside investors. And even if you don't need an entity, having an entity makes you look more professional. So when you're engaging with other parties. So when you form an entity, there's a few choices. The main ones are form a C Corp, form an S Corp, or form an LLC. So what are these things and what would you do and how are they different? So first, just to know that when you form a corporation, by default, with you doing nothing more, it's taxed as a C corporation. If you want S Corp treatment, which is a tax treatment, you need to file a Form 2553 and elect S Corp taxation. And that gives you what's called pass-through taxation. An LLC also has pass-through taxation. It's similar but different. So it's interesting that an LLC entity is not actually recognized by the tax code. It's either taxed as a partnership or it's taxed as a sole proprietor, as if there were no entity. And it's interesting also that an LLC can choose then, since it's not recognized by the tax code, you can choose how you want to tax it: S Corp, C Corp, partnership, sole proprietor, etc. So what does pass-through taxation mean? That means that instead of being taxed at the entity level and then taxed at the individual level, it's passed through. So all the individual owners are taxed at their individual level. There's some advantages and there's disadvantages to that. So the entity basically pays no tax, except there are additional California taxes. So there's an annual $800 minimum franchise. If you're an S Corp, you have to pay 1.5% of net income. And then California slaps a gross receipt fee on LLCs, depending on your gross revenue. And I have the chart there. So it can be up to $11,700 if you have revenue of over $5 million. So then if you don't have pass-through taxation, what you have is what's called double taxation. People don't like that. No one wants to be taxed twice on the same dollar. So that means that the entity, the C corporation, is taxed at its level. So when it has revenue, taxable revenue, it's taxed. And then if it distributes or pays money to the owners, those owners are taxed again. So generally, we want to avoid that. That's why LLCs and S Corps tend to be very favorable for certain circumstances. But for typical startup companies, being a C Corp actually doesn't trigger double taxation often because there's relatively no taxable income, at least in the early stages. If you have losses, you can carry those forward. And then you can also get R&D tax credits. So when would you, if you're a typical startup, then what would you choose? So there's some interesting things about it, why a C Corp is actually preferred for startup companies. One of them is a tax advantage under an IRS code called IRS code 1202. This is amazing tax break. It basically provides that if you hold stock in a C corporation and you hold that stock for at least 5 years and you meet some other requirements like no more than 50 million in assets, then when you sell that stock, there's no tax on the gain of that sale up to the greater of 10 million or 10x what you paid for that stock. It's an amazing tax break. So a very strong argument in favor of a C Corp. LLCs and S Corps don't qualify for that. Also, when outside investors come in and they want to buy preferred stock, the best way to do that is in a C Corp. You can technically do it in an LLC, but it's not straightforward. S Corps also have restrictions. I'll get to that in a second. You can also do incentive stock options with C Corps, and it happens to be the most well-known structure because of all these advantages. S Corps, they provide the advantage of pass-through taxation, but they do have this list of restrictions. So you can't have preferred stock, for example. You can't have entities as shareholders. So if one shareholder wants to hold stock as an LLC, that's a problem. You can't have non-resident alien shareholders, and you're limited on the number to 100. So when would an S Corp or an LLC actually be preferred? So if you're not seeking outside investors right away, if IRS code 1202 is, it requires a 5-year holding period. So if you think that you're going to sell later, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you could probably operate it as an LLC for a couple of years. Also, if you're going to be generating revenues early and you want to take personal tax breaks from the services you provide to the company, an S Corp happens to be better. For example, my law firm is taxed as an S Corp. LLCs are used often to hold real property, and they're also very flexible. There's no end really to all the ways you can structure an LLC. And then there's an interesting aspect that I'll talk a little bit more about. This might be surprising to you because I don't find that a lot of people talk about this, but if you are a founder of a C Corp, you are automatically deemed in California to be a W-2 employee and you have to pay wages to the founder. Most startups don't have money to pay wages, so what do? They violate the law, most of them. If you're formed as an LLC, though, owners of LLCs cannot be deemed W-2 employees. So if that's an issue, there might be an advantage early on to forming as an LLC. And then this slide is just a quick note that you can form as an LLC, and then you can convert later to a C corporation. So there's some restrictions on that, and it can get really complex if the company has matured substantially, and the conversion can be quite expensive if the company has matured substantially. But if it's still relatively in the early stages, it can be relatively inexpensive. You have to watch, for example, the more business you do, contracts with third parties might require consent, so you have to reach out to third parties. That's one complexity. And then note, just remember that if you want IRS code 1202 treatment under a C Corp, you don't get that until you convert to the C Corp. So the time that you're an LLC doesn't count for the 5-year holding period. And then an important question that we can talk about more, of course, in the Q&A is, will investors require your company to be a C Corp? So if you formed as an S Corp or an LLC, is it required or will they require you? So there are really good reasons for it to be a C Corp. And there might be good reasons to keep it as an LLC, so it really depends. And maybe in the Q&A, we can flesh that out a little bit more. The next question is, so you decide on forming an entity, and let's say we're going to form a C Corp. You might not know, but you don't have to form it in the state in which you reside. I'm in California, and I'm assuming most people are in California. So the question for California residents is, should you form it in California, or what about another state? There's states like Nevada or Wyoming, Florida, Texas. Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware seem to be the most prominent other states apart from the state you reside in. There's certain advantages to Wyoming. Nevada, as to whether Nevada has advantages, it tends to be mostly mythology. There's no real advantage to forming an entity in Nevada if you reside in California. There are significant advantages, though, to forming in Delaware. Not enough time to go into details here, but in general, more than 100 years ago, Delaware sought specifically to be the best state in the nation to form and run corporations. And so they intentionally set out to create a corporate law that was most favorable where folks would want to form in that state. They achieved that goal, and they have maintained it since then. Most public companies are formed in Delaware, and most high-tech, rapid growth startup companies that are seeking outside investors are also formed in Delaware. There is an added cost. You have to pay Delaware annual tax filings, and you have to hire an agent for service of process. It's about $110 for that. And if you're at your minimum tax level, it's about $400. I have some notes about it. Delaware taxes can actually be quite complex to compute. So you should review the link that I have. Oh, and also, I believe you are all provided slides so that you all have copies of this. If in fact you don't, happy to email me and I can provide you, the slides. But you should check out that link, because you'll receive a notice in the mail from Delaware saying you owe an enormous amount of taxes, 80K plus often, sometimes a couple $100,000. And it's because Delaware is using one form of calculating. And if you simply use the other form, you get back down to like $400, assuming you're in the early stages and you don't have a high value of assets. So one question that I get often, I just fielded this with a client just the other day, and probably another one similar a week prior, is I want to issue founder shares. What are those? Well, the term founder is not a legal term, and there's no such thing as founder shares per se as a legal term. There's really only common stock and preferred stock. And we'll get into preferred a little bit more, but preferred is what investors buy. So common stock is just basic. It it carries little rights to it other than you have one share, you get one vote for your one share. That can change, but it's rarely changed. And you get rights to distributions. Startups don't really do distributions. And of course, when the company sells, you get the payout on your one share. Preferred stock has preferential rights built into it. Special liquidation preferences, dividend preferences, anti-dilution protection, and then veto rights. Veto rights mean that most investors hold a minority of the company, like maybe 20%. They want to have rights to block certain things, even though they'll get outvoted because they only hold 20%. They want to be able to block something. So that gives them the ability to block certain transactions, even though they hold only 20%. So because investors are not involved in managing the company and they don't have any control about their risk, they want these special protections. The founders, though, don't get these special protections typically. They could issue preferred stock to themselves, but it's rare. Normally they get common stock, and that's what are referred to as founder shares. There's a link to a really good book. You've probably heard of it, but if you haven't, I definitely recommend you click that link and you buy that book, Venture Deals by Bradfeld. It explains a lot more. So one thing that's important to think about when issuing shares among your co-founders at formation is this concept of vesting. You'll hear about a lot in the startup world. If you haven't, as a brief summary, vesting is really important for two groups of people. One is when investors come along and they invest in the company, they want to know that the founders are going to stick with the company. So they'll impose vesting. But let's assume no investors are around yet and it's still the early days. The co-founders want to protect themselves from each other. So typical scenarios like 3 co-founders get together and they're all in on the company and they're all, I'm in this for the long haul, but 6 months later, plans change, things change, and one investor backs out. Well, the other 2 investors continue building the company for 2, 3, 4 years, 7 years, and they sell the company for millions. And that founder who backed out still holds the same shares that founder got at formation and gets millions. Not really fair. So what vesting does is that you get the shares up front. So folks often confuse this also. They think that the shares are issued over time. That's not true. The shares are all issued up front. Let's say each founder gets 2 million shares. For 3 founders, there's 6 million shares issued total. They actually hold their shares. They can vote them, everything. But what happens is the vesting means that it vests over a period of years, like 3 to 5 years. And if you leave before the shares are fully vested, whatever shares are not vested, the founder loses. They get technically bought back or forfeited. They get bought back at the original purchase price, which is usually a really low price, like 0.0001 per share. So vesting can be done by time or milestones or both. Milestones like company achievements, like if we raise a certain amount of money or we get certain revenues, etc. There's a thing called an 83B election. People throw that term around a lot. They don't know what it means, but basically it just means that when you get shares that vest over time, the default rule is that you get taxed every time the shares vest, and they usually vest monthly. It would be a nightmare to have to report taxes on a monthly basis for monthly chunks of vesting of shares. Plus, if the value goes up, your tax burden is higher and higher every time it vests. It's incredibly chaotic and terrible. So there's an alternative under Section 83B of the IRS code where, to avoid that nightmare, you file an 83B election and you elect to be taxed up front on the value of the shares on the date you get them. Even though they vest over time, and you may not end up getting the shares, because if you leave the company, you lose all the shares. So the bargain is you agree to be taxed up front, and then you don't have to report taxes every time they vest. This is very important for co-founders because, again, it avoids later disputes when co-founders change plans and leave. It provides an automatic way of pulling shares back from that founder and back into the company. So a big question is, well, how many shares should the founders get? That's a really hard question to answer, but I can provide some initial guidelines. So when I form new companies, I typically authorize 10 million shares at formation, and I typically issue about 7 to 8 million shares among the founders. So if there's 4 founders, then it might be 2 million shares each, and they're each equal. And this also, if people can get confused about, if you issue 8 million shares, 2 million to each founder, the 8 million shares represents 100% of the company, even though there's 10 million authorized. The extra 2 million is not counted because it's not issued yet. So 8 million is issued among 4 founders. That means they each hold 25% of the company. But it is true that the other 2 million is sitting there and it can be issued. So they will get diluted if the other 2 million is issued. So you can consider it that you have, say, 2 million out of 10 million. Then you would have only 20%. But the fact is that if you hold 2 million shares out of 8 million issued, you hold 25% of the company. As far as how much to allocate, if you issue 8 million among the co-founders, how much of that to allocate? Should one person get, 40%? Should another person get 10 or 15%? That's super complex, and it really comes down to the dynamics among the founders. There's a couple of links that I included that might be valuable in guiding you in making those decisions. Those aren't definitive and they're only somewhat helpful. Really, it just comes down to the dynamics of the team. So the next question is, what about when you bring on service providers? How much equity should you issue to those folks? That's a similarly very difficult question. I included a bunch of links. That option pool shuffle link is really interesting and entertaining, and it's very important. Then these other links, that book, The Holloway Guide, is really good. And of course, you should check out Carta Total Comp. They provide benchmark information. You have to be on their platform to get it, but it's really good. Oh, in general, one comment to that is you'll be surprised at how low the percentages are. So folks tend to give too much equity. And so these are good to review to just confirm that less than 1% or 1% or 2% or 3% given, depending on the position, is often the right decision rather than 10%, 5%, et cetera. So in summary, on forming an entity, if you're forming a startup and it's a typical rapid growth startup, you intend to sell in 5 to 7 years, a Delaware C Corp is the default vehicle to do that in. It's the most attractive. There can be a really good reason to form a California LLC instead in your early years, maybe a year or two, because then you don't have to pay wages to the founders. The idea would be that you convert to a C Corp when you need it, like when investors are coming in to buy equity or if they require it earlier. If you're not forming a typical startup and you're just intending to be a small business, like my firm is not a startup, we're not going to get investors and sell. We're formed as an S Corp. There's a lot of advantages to LLCs, so those are good considerations. I've included a couple of slides and I'll talk a bit about employment law because most startup founders don't pay attention to employment law. And that's detrimental. So it's really important to know that in California, it's pretty strict. The default rule in California that anybody providing services to the company is deemed a W-2 employee. That includes founders, that includes friends and family, that includes folks that are in school that you deem are, interns. You'll be surprised, you got to pay all these people. You can hire interns, but it's under strict requirements. And most founders of startups who think they're going to hire an intern are confusing and not doing it properly. But note that I said earlier, if you're an owner in an LLC, you cannot be deemed to be a W-2 employee. So that is some relief from paying wages in your early days. You should also know that, again, the default rule is everybody is a W-2 employee unless you can prove that that person meets the strict requirements to be considered a contractor. So I've listed some of them. The business contract relationship is the most well-known. So it requires a written contract. It requires that the person advertises to provide similar services to others. I often advise clients that don't retain someone as a contractor unless they have a website advertising their services. It's not required by the law, but I also advise that contractor have an entity like an S Corp or an LLC for that contractor's services, because that really shows that they're serious about owning and running their own business separate from this. There's exceptions for what's called professional services, so marketing, HR, graphic design, things like that. There's details with those exceptions. So the bottom line is be super careful about hiring someone and classifying them as a contractor and think you're okay getting out of W-2 employment law. You're usually not going to do that under California, and it's really difficult. This, by the way, the law changed in January 2020. That's when this became like this. Also important to know that when you are in employment law, so now you've decided, okay, the person is an employee. Well, I can just pay them a salary and they'll be exempt from meal and rest breaks and overtime pay and all that other stuff. That's not true. Paying someone a salary, if the salary works out to $10 an hour on a salary basis, you've just violated minimum wage. You're not even paying them minimum wage. So the law views only whether the person is exempt or non-exempt. And non-exempt simply means you can't get out of the overtime, meal and rest break and all those laws. Exempt means you don't have to comply with those. So for example, there's several categories of exempt employee. One of them is an executive. So again, startup founders make the mistakes thinking that they're an exempt employee because they're a CEO. But if the company has only maybe one founder or two founders, a CEO and a CFO, one of the requirements to be an exempt employee is that you direct 2 or more employees. You don't have that in a very early stage startup. Also, you're required to pay 2 times full-time minimum wage. So I think that's, if I were to do the calculation, I think that's in the 50K region. So again, a lot of startups aren't going to meet that. And then there's a few other exempt categories. So bottom line to recognize is you really need to pay attention to employment law. Don't haphazardly categorize someone as a contractor, and be very careful about categorizing someone as exempt or non-exempt. And that's kind of, oh, there's another, common myth among startups is that you can issue stock in lieu of wages. So they'll talk about, you hear the phrase sweat equity. We're co-founders and we get sweat equity. And it might be confusing because in other states you can do that. So there is a federal exemption that if you own 20% equity in a company, you can work for sweat equity and you can not be paid wages. That's a federal law, and some states have adopted that federal law, but unfortunately California has not. So yes, other startups in other states can do that, but not in California. And then I have seen these disputes where founders have not paid co-founders, and then one founder leaves after maybe 2 years or so, and then maybe there wasn't vesting on the stock, and so there's a negotiation about the buyout. They disagree on the value of the stock, and that departed founder hires an attorney and says, "I'd really like them to pay me $200K for this stock," and the lawyer says, "What did they pay you wages?" "No, they never paid me wages." "Well, let's tack on another $200K for unpaid wages." Now the negotiation goes from 200K to 400K. It's brutal, and I've seen it. I wanted to include some notes about forming an entity. A lot of folks choose these online platforms, and I've included some notes about that. And just to be quick, the bottom line is please don't use those if you're a serious startup company intending to get outside financing and intending to really grow and be serious. Clerky and Gust happen to be pretty good for what they are. But you don't get any legal guidance, and you don't have knowledge about why should I choose this, what kind of vesting should I do, and so on. And so even if you use Clerky and Gust, you're probably going to be missing important things. If you use LegalZoom, I guarantee you will miss important things. And I've done lots of cleanups, and it's cost the companies more money to clean it up than it was to just hire an attorney in the first place. So just pay the money and do it right from the beginning. Wanted to include some notes about IP. Forming an entity is really important because you can house all the IP. So it's really important to document the IP, keep detailed records of its creation before you form an entity. And then when you form the entity, you have to execute an agreement that assigns the IP into the company. I just was working with a really important startup the other day, and for some reason, they didn't do the assignment of IP agreement. So that got missed. They even used an attorney for this. Then once the IP is documented as transferred into the entity, all founders, all service providers should sign a document that ensures that any IP they create is owned by the company. One word for that is called a proprietary rights and inventions assignment agreement. There are other similar terms for it. And if you're developing software, be very careful about open source license terms. I see violations of that a lot. Finally, let's talk about early stage financing. And again, hopefully we'll get into more in the Q&A. Just a quick review. There's two forms of stock, common stock and preferred. Common stock really has no rights. Preferred has a bunch of bells and whistles that investors want to get. When investors invest in a company, they typically don't want to buy common. Sometimes they do, but it's rare. They mostly want preferred stock. And they don't want to do debt. They don't want to just do a promissory note because you'll get, maybe what, 7 or 8%, maybe 10%. They want the huge win. They want a 10x return or more on their investment. And they're going to get that by holding stock, and they're going to be protected by holding preferred stock. So bottom line, investors want to get preferred stock. So what is the best way for an investor to get preferred stock? You might be interested to know, so you've probably heard of things like convertible notes and safes. Maybe you've heard about Series C preferred stock. It's really fascinating to know that before 2005, none of those things existed. The only way for an outside investor to invest in a company was to buy either common stock or Series A preferred stock. In 2005, this concept of a convertible note was used for later stage financings called bridge financings, and it was brought to the forefront for early stage initial investment. That was the first time it was done in 2005. Those were a great relief, and they were really simple and great. They started getting really complex, and then safes were invented by Y Combinator in 2013. Very much like convertible notes, but they're even more simple. And then this concept of Series C preferred stock got invented between 2008 and 2010. So I'll talk more about these just briefly. So why not? So again, if I go back here, your initial choice was either common or Series A preferred. So why not just buy Series A preferred? Well, it's really complex. There's a lot of documents, they're really long, and there's a lot of details. And most early stage startups don't need the complexity of these docs. Legal fees are really high, 50K plus to do this. So if you're raising 500K, 750K, maybe $1 million, why pay 50K in legal fees or more? So that's why the convertible note came around. They're a lot quicker to negotiate. They provide more protection than common stock. But you have to remember they are a proxy. Investors want preferred stock. Convertible notes don't give investors they don't give preferred stock, but what they give is the ability to convert it into preferred stock in the future. So it's a kind of a proxy or a simple way to get in and then convert it later. So it's actual debt. There's interest on it. There's a maturity date. And the maturity date can be brutal because a lot of startup companies, the intention is that it will convert to preferred stock before the maturity date. But what happens in reality is often that gets hit and the founders are caught with their pants down and the investors have a bunch of leverage because they could call the note due in its entirety. They could bankrupt the company. And now there's a negotiation again. So notes have gotten complex over the years. There's valuation caps, there's discounts, there's conversion features into shadow preferred. You can even add other things like equity rights, board and information rights, reps and warranties, veto rights, all these bells and whistles, and they can greatly complicate convertible note. You can even secure them with all the assets of the company. So also you should know that if you do a convertible note, you of course don't hold stock and you don't get IRS 1202 tax treatment. And then there's this thing called an original issue discount tax. I won't go into detail, but an investor will get taxed every year that they hold a convertible note. It's quite surprising to learn that. So Y Combinator invented the safe in 2013, and basically it's a convertible note that's been simplified. It strips out the debt features. So there's no maturity date and there's no interest. It's short document and it's meant to not be negotiated or minimal negotiations. It's got a cap and a discount like convertible notes. It also is treated like preferred stock when the company liquidates. It's got a lot of great features. And then also you've probably heard of the newer, I think it was 2021 when Y Combinator changed its form from a pre-money to a post-money form. It's a great form, but you really have to be careful because founders can be severely diluted if you do multiple safes or convertible notes after you issue the first one. There's a lot of details about that. Happy to chat in Q&A about that. And then also, the document itself, the SAFE, contains terms saying that it qualifies for IRS 1202 tax treatment, even though the investor doesn't technically hold stock yet in the C corporation. So you can say it qualifies for IRS 1202 tax treatment. The IRS could very likely disagree. So as far as I'm aware, to date, that has been untested and is unsure. The only real way to know that you get IRS code 1202 tax treatment is for the investor to actually hold stock, preferred stock. So Series C preferred stock is a magical alternative to Series A preferred stock. It's basically Series A preferred stock, but stripped down and simplified. So instead of 6 documents, there's only really 2 documents. The COI means the Certificate of Incorporation. That contains all the preferences about the preferred stock. And then the investment agreement is the purchase agreement, just the purchase terms. The term sheet is, the preliminary document. So really there's 2 deal documents as opposed to 6 for Series A. Series A includes important terms that investors like to see. It includes important reps and warranties and other features, pro rata rights, additional rights when the company indeed does do its Series A. I actually like Series Seed a lot. One thing that founders talk about is that they don't want to do preferred stock because they don't want to commit to a valuation. But when you put a valuation cap on a convertible note or on a SAFE, you're doing a valuation anyway. So you don't avoid that with SAFEs and notes. If you just go ahead and do Series C, there's a lot of clarity because you don't have the chaos of how are all these notes and SAFEs going to convert. The cost is far less than a Series A. It's more than a SAFE and note, but it tends to be around 25K. But you can get huge tax benefits because you qualify from IRS 1202 benefit, and there's no original issue discount problem. So what should you use if you're doing a financing? I tend to find in my practice that if you're doing 500K to $1 million, it's kind of a in-between zone. I've done a lot of deals with clients. Well, I just saw a client the other day that did $30 million in safes. That's extraordinary. I was just working with a client yesterday who's doing $2.5 million in safes. I don't think that's the best strategy. I think Series Seed preferred stock is looking very attractive once you get above 500K. I think below 500K, I think there's a real advantage to doing a safe, maybe a convertible note. A note also that some investors like convertible notes because they like the hammer of that maturity date and they like having leverage. Investors get paid first if the company is going bankrupt because creditors get paid before stockholders. So there is that important aspect to notes. There's an interesting quote. You should actually click on this link here and you should read the whole post by Fred Wilson. He hates safes and notes and wishes they would just go away. I'm not in his camp, but I tend to agree that once you get a significant amount of money, you should really seriously consider Series C preferred stock. So last slide is just some common mistakes that I see. Not engaging a professional early on, not doing vesting. Founders are only part-time. It's really hard to launch a startup if you're not all in. Not controlling your IP. Using safes without really understanding their complexities. Here's one of them that I just saw recently for a client, using a finder where the finder expects to get a finder's fee or a commission-based payment when that finder helps bring in financing. You have to be licensed to do that. Most finders are not. And then employment law issues that I talked about. So I know that was a whirlwind tour, and I know that if a lot of this is new, it's just like, wait a minute, can we go over that again? So that's where the fun starts because I really enjoy Q&A a lot better than just talking. So please hit me with your questions. Oh, and I just want to say I have my email on here. Happy to follow up if you have follow-up questions in email. Happy to schedule a follow-up call.
All right, so thank you, Brian. So I'm going to help moderate the chat. So if you guys have a question, raise your digital hand using the raise hand button below. So we got Garrett up first. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Brian. I like how you said founder in quotes. That I've
Yeah.
been doing a little bit of contract law, so that's funny. Have you heard of I have a few questions. Have you heard of a top off clause?
No, tell me, what is that?
I don't know. Never mind.
In what context is it? Maybe we could figure it out.
Well, I'm planning on giving you a call and maybe we could discuss it at another time.
Okay.
But okay, so you talked about IRS code 1202 for taxed, not taxed on less than 10 mil, and then IRS code 83B elect to tax now.
Yeah.
So is the taxed amount, is that like a post, if say you're doing a safe, is that like the post money amount, or is that like the amount that
Yeah.
you're buying the shares for, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, great question. So when you form a company, there's usually little to no value. Unless you've stuck a lot of value right at formation, it's pretty rare that there's any value. So typically when you issue shares to the initial founders, I issue shares at a value of 0.00001 per share. What is that, like a millionth or a thousandth of a cent? I don't even know, it's super low. So, 2 million shares at 0.00001. I forget again, is that like $20 for the value?
Okay.
So when you elect to be taxed, if you didn't pay for those shares, if you received them for like past services, that's considered compensation, like wages. So let's say it had higher value. Let's say it was valued at $100,000 and the company issues stock to you. You have to report to the IRS that you received $100,000 worth of stock, and you're going to be taxed at ordinary income when you receive those shares. So when you file the 83B election, you're reporting that you received this stock. If you paid cash, like if you actually paid the $20 for those shares, then there's no tax event because you paid for the shares and you got the shares. But if you didn't pay and you issued the stock in exchange for services, then yes, there's a tax event. You would pay tax on the receipt of $20 worth of stock. Then you sit and you hold that stock for 5 years and the company sells for $100 million and your gain is $10 million. Under IRS code 1202, you're not taxed on that gain.
Okay.
I should add that states are different. Some states follow the federal and some states don't. California does not. So you'll pay California taxes, even under IRS code 1202.
Okay. And that's if I'm employed in California, or what if I'm like technically employed in another state?
If you live in another state, then as far as IRS code 1202 tax treatment, you just have to look at that state, whether they have a state version of the 1202. 1202 is federal, and you have to look at whether the state has that.
All right. Thank you, Garrett. And Anastasia, you're up next. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for the presentation. Lots of information to process.
Yeah.
So in one of the slides, you mentioned that you cannot issue stock in lieu of wages under California law. I'm curious, if it's an LLC, can you pay your employees you cannot?
Oh, wait, sorry. Please go ahead.
Can you pay your employees with equity in lieu of wages if it's an LLC?
So you say pay employees. So you're not talking about not the founders, but just someone you hire to perform services for the company.
Correct. Yeah.
And they don't own equity in the company, right?
Correct.
But you're considering giving them equity and then you don't have to pay them wages.
Correct.
That's it. Good question. So LLCs, again, are not recognized by the tax code. So if you choose to tax your LLC as a partnership, then you're under partnership tax rules. Now, if you elect to be taxed as an S Corp or a C Corp, you're back to C Corp, so you can't do this. But if you're taxed as a partnership under partnership tax rules, an owner who has significant input into management and control of the company cannot be deemed to be a W-2 employee. So they have to not only own equity, but they also have to participate meaningfully in the management and control of the company. If you issue an employee who really is not considered a co-founder and you issue them a very small percentage of the company and you give them a token like vote in management, that will likely fail that test. They have to be considered like a co-founder, like someone who has significant input into the management and direction of the company.
What if it's
And
a silent member? Can you make them as a silent member?
Well, silent, do you mean that they don't participate in management? They don't vote? Yeah, then they're probably going to fall out of that test. And so they would be deemed to not be a partner. So there's a bunch of litigation. It's interesting. Their law firms are often formed as partnerships, and they will make an attorney a partner, like in name. And then the person might get fired, and then the person sues for unpaid wages or things like that, employment law violations, and the law firm will argue, hey, this person was a partner. And then they'll look at these issues and they'll say, no, the partner was not, in fact, that person was not in fact a partner because that person didn't have meaningful say in the management and control of the company. So the partnership will be required to comply with employment law.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Zachary Love from ProvideWell Inc.
Howdy. Delaware. Hey, Delaware C Corp, registered as a foreign entity in California. What are the minimum payroll requirements for founders, early key employees? No one's asking for money, but it sounds like we need to like pay them something. Can it be a base salary? Does it have to be hourly? What's like the minimum that the state's going to want to see?
Good question. So if you're a C corporation, that means that everybody providing services is going to be deemed a W-2 employee unless they can meet the requirements to categorize them as a contractor. If you can categorize the person as a contractor, then you're out of employment law. That's tough for a co-founder. If the person is a CEO, CFO, things like that, no way is that person unless they're a legit like part-time, outsourced CFO, things like that. But let's assume, they're rendering services to the company on a regular basis. They're not deemed a contractor. So the minimum is minimum wage, which I forget what it is right now. You can look that up. But yeah, the minimum is minimum wage. If they indeed qualify for the category to make them an exempt employee, well, you have to pay more than minimum wage. You have to pay 2x minimum wage. And that gets you out of complying with overtime, meal breaks, and rest breaks. So founders who are grinding day in, day out, weekends, everything, you're going to have to comply with overtime, pay, and all that other stuff unless that co-founder is actually classified as an exempt employee, usually the executive, and it requires that that person supervise 2 or more other employees, and you pay 2x minimum wage.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Brian Ward, you're up.
Hi, I have 2 unrelated questions. So one is there any downside to holding your stock in a trust, like for as a founder, like for estate planning? And then
That's good.
And the second was if you incorporate it as a California corporation, can you change to Delaware, or are you just stuck there?
Yeah, great questions. First, you should hold it in a trust. In fact, I advise most founders of my companies that if they don't have estate planning already put in place, if they don't have trust, now might be a good time. So yes, you should hold it in your trust, but please confer with your estate planning attorney. I'm not an estate planning attorney, but I generally don't see any reason why not to put it in the trust. Second, if you're a California corp, you can indeed, you can't technically convert, but you do a merger. So you form a Delaware corp and then you merge it. It's very similar to the conversion procedure. So you're not stuck forever in California.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Victoria.
Hello. Did I unmute myself? Yeah, okay. So this question is actually more so related to employment labor law, and for my other 2, this is not the one that I've mainly associated myself with for eTrack, but I have a business that provides white glove executive assistant support, and then I have another business that is an educational platform that trains the assistants. And so right now my current business model is that the it's B2B from the client facing business, and then the assistants are contracted through me. So as far as like the ABC law, is concerned, do they have to have their own entity, or can they just be like self-reported on their taxes as a 1099 contractor?
Ooh, that's probably more complex than what I can answer on this call.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just be very careful about that. And if you want a referral to a good attorney who practices full time in this, I have a good referral for you.
That would be great. How do I get that referral from you?
Just email me and I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, maybe Stephen can put his email address in the chat. All right, Melissa.
Okay, hi. I guess my question is sort of about order of operations. So I recently became an LLC. I started with a DBA fictitious name in 2018.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, November went to LLC, and now I'm like, okay, I really need investors because I've gone as far as I can alone.
Yeah.
So now I'm moving I'm thinking about converting to a Delaware C Corp or C Corp. And I also recently found someone to be a COO. So she's coming on with me, and because I don't know how to hire anyone, so she's coming on as an independent contractor, as a 1099 employee. And so I'm like, okay, what do I need to do first? Do I need to incorporate and then get a labor contract, or like, where do I even start?
Yeah, good questions. Well, you should get a good attorney to advise you on these things, but I could throw out a couple of
I got an attorney, but he got a concussion and he's not available until January. So
might be so bottom line, you don't need to be a C Corp for an investor to vest in your company, but there's a lot of caveats to that. And I know Jad Duncan is on the call. He has a lot of we were actually talking a few days ago about this very question. So there are a lot of good reasons to be a C Corp. I would actually not jump the gun and convert to a C Corp unless you actually have investors who are interested in investing and they tell you, hey, we need you to convert. Because why incur the expense if your investors don't require it? And also, if you're going to do a SAFE or a convertible note, also technically you don't need to be a C Corp for a SAFE or convertible note. You can, those things convert to preferred stock in the future. So when you get to the point where you're issuing preferred stock, you can convert at that point. But there's also a good point to remember that the longer you wait to convert, the more complex your business is and the more expensive it might get to convert. So Jad is waiting there. He told me a story of a company that had to pay $100K in legal expenses to convert to a C Corp. So you want to be careful about that stuff. So yeah, I would just get investor interest first. And it's very common to close a financing deal and to make the conversion close simultaneously with the deal as part of the deal.
Okay. Any comment on having a COO as a 1099 contractor?
Yeah, well, my prior comments about that. So if you're an LLC and that COO owns stock in your company, is actually managing, and is like considered a co-founder.
I don't even have stock. So how can they be like, so my attorney said, you can't even talk about offering stock because you don't have stock and that's fraud. And so I'm like, how do I get somebody, right? How do I even get competitive when somebody else is offering equity in a company? And he's like, you can't offer equity. You don't have equity yet. You're not set up that way. So.
Yeah, so an LLC, you can offer equity. It's technically not called stock. It's called a membership interest, but it's basically the same thing in LLC form. So yes, you can offer equity, and LLCs are super flexible. You can do a lot with an LLC, including offering equity. You can make it vest. You can do a lot of things with it.
Well, I could do like a vested with a 1 year, like 5-year vesting with a 1 year cliff, or 4-year vesting with a 1 year cliff with an LLC.
You can do that, yes.
And then I just need someone to write up like some sort of employment contract that says that.
Well, you're going to have an operating agreement for your LLC. You're going to probably have a purchase agreement that's going to define issuing the equity to this person. You're probably going to have maybe one more contract that just defines their role. If they're a COO, maybe, again, don't mix the terms employee and 1099. 1099 means independent contractor. and employee means W-2 employee, and they're very different.
And that's what I'm trying to get to. But because I can't hire her as an employee because I have nothing. So I bring her on at under 1099 right now as an independent contractor, but I need to make that conversion. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. What comes first? Like what just comes first? So.
It doesn't sound like you need to convert to a C Corp right now. But again, you should get more, details with your attorney. Get a different one if your attorney can't come online
Yeah,
until
if
January.
he has a concussion, do you have a recommendation for me also?
Maybe it depends if you're in California.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, so email me.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Stephen put Brian's email in the chat. Okay, Robbie, you're next.
Hi, Brian. Thank you. I'm audible, right? I think so.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, so I think I have a couple of questions, and I'm gonna try to not trip myself and other folks as well. But one thing I don't think I caught it. Did you mention if there were a minimum number of people that need to be on C Corp? So how many? Because I've been looking into creating an entity for C Corp, Delaware C Corp. The minimum number of employees if I'm a solo founder, can I be doing everything? So
yes, you can.
And even be on the board of directors?
Yes, you can be the CEO, CFO, secretary. Those are required in California, even though you're Delaware. You can be the sole board director, sole shareholder. Yes, you can do all that.
And so the second question to this is, in what cases, so I'm also trying to figure out a bit of an immigration issue. So, I'm putting into, so my entity can sponsor a visa for me, and that if I come in as a CEO, so my corporation is going to offer me a CEO position. So how do I do that? The founder
It's super easy to make yourself the CEO. There's just a simple document that puts that in place. The question is, I'm not an immigration attorney, so you need to review with your immigration attorney what you need to comply with, the visa. But as far as making yourself the CEO, super simple.
And as a founder, I can give myself a offer letter I'm just like.
I wouldn't even do an offer letter. I would just, when I formed the company, we would just issue stock to you and appoint you the CEO.
Okay. Right.
You need an attorney to help you with this stuff.
Thanks.
Okay, Brian, we've got 4 people left, and then so we'll see. We'll try to. I don't want to run you down. So
no, I'm fine. I greatly exceeded my speaking time. I intended to end by 7:25 or 7:30, but I went way over that. So as long as you guys are not falling asleep, I'm happy to field questions.
And then we'll tell them about the office hours we have when we close. So go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you talked about converting from LLC to C Corp. What if you're an S Corp that started off as a small business consulting, but's now pivoting to startup and seeking investors?
So you're an S Corp. It's really easy to abandon your S Corp. So again, when you form a corporation, it's by default a C Corp.
Okay.
And then you have to file IRS Form 2553 to elect S Corp taxation. So the S or the C is merely a tax election.
Okay.
So you don't need to change anything fundamentally about the corporation to make it a C Corp again. In fact, you don't have to convert it or anything like that. All you do is abandon your S Corp election. And you can do that passively just by violating the rules. And then and there's no penalty for violating the rules other than you just aren't a S Corp anymore. Or you can actually proactively send in a letter to the IRS to say, I hereby, the company hereby elects to abandon its S Corp as of X date.
Okay.
And any attorney, an attorney who knows this or a CPA can help you do that.
Okay, yeah, our CPA could probably do that. And then would you recommend waiting to do that until we're closer to getting the investors looped in?
Yeah, if there's advantages to being an S Corp right now, then I would continue those advantages as long as possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Michael Anderson.
Hey, I know you. You're on mute.
We don't want that, do we?
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time and your contributions to the community. Obviously, it's of great need, and all this stuff is clearly super valuable. So I think above and beyond that, I can never pass up the opportunity to get some free legal advice.
Yeah.
Just for those on the call, real quick, and other entrepreneurs, I was the prior founding CEO for a startup company here in San Diego called Doctable. We started in 2013. We built and sold to a private equity company in 22. And while I hated paying those expensive lawyer bills, no offense, Brian, but I cannot emphasize how important it is to set up the foundation of your company's stock and compensation plans and formation correctly. We spent thousands of dollars restructuring ours as we grew the company over time. And it really comes to bear when you are selling the company. The tax consequences to you and your employees are quite significant. So I think the things Brian mentioned about the 1202 and the 83B are you got to know this stuff. It's super important. Anyway, I'll shift gears. Brian, my question to you is, my next startup is different than my last, where it was a Delaware C Corp. All the employees were under a single roof here in the state of California. The next one is a Delaware C Corp. We put our home base in Texas, but the team of 7 is spread all across the US in individual states. And I'm assuming a lot of entrepreneurs post-COVID are choosing this route to pick the best people no matter where they're located. This introduces some complexities on payroll and state employee law, but my question to you is there anything I should be thinking about in terms of corporate formation, how it's structured when you start a company with employees spread all across the US?
So as far as, if I understand your question correctly, you're restricting the question to the corporate formation, like the structure of the corporation, its stock, its bylaws, its directors and officers structure, all those things, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's just different, spread across many states on the onset versus simplistic of, hey, we're all in California.
Yeah. So I mean, you already mentioned, I think that you formed the company in Delaware, right?
Yes.
I think this is a great example of, it's helpful to be in Delaware because, maybe you're the only one in California. Maybe you'll leave California.
I am.
So you would hate to have formed in California when now none of the co-founders are in California. Delaware is just kind of like the lingua franca of corporate law. It allows you to go around to all attorneys like me. They know their state law and they know Delaware. So that would be the number one answer, which you've already done. But as far as all the other internal stuff, not really. I don't think it really changes given what you've described, other than if you have employees in multiple states, there's this concept of qualifying to do business in the state. You're probably already familiar with that. So the phrase is, if you're doing business in the state requires you to register in that state and be subject to annual tax filings and information filings and things like that. So the question is, are you, quote, doing business? Generally, when you hire an employee in that state, you're doing business. So the answer is likely going to be yes, you have to qualify to do business in that state. And so if you're a CEO running the company from California, you're generally going to have to register to do business in California. So that would be the major thing that I would look at, is make sure you're qualified in these states. And it brings a burden. It brings a compliance burden and fee and tax burden.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. You can sometimes avoid, doing business if you have retained merely an independent contractor in that state. But hiring an employee, also, you got to register with the state's equivalent of the California Employment Development Department, the EDD, and you're going to have to make employment, wage withholdings and all that in that state.
Wow.
So yes, having employees in multiple states makes life very complex.
Do you suggest then, I mean, outside of registering, obviously, when you do payroll, then an individual state you register, then is there something else I should be thinking above and beyond that in the registration process?
Not that's coming to mind right now.
Okay.
But just the fact that when you register, you are bound to, filing a state tax if the state charges taxes And, you know, if it's like California, it requires an annual information statement, you know, compliance things around that.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as always.
All right, Danny.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Brian, thank you for your talk. I won't get too detailed because I know this is mainly an immigration law question, but I just want to ask you a question. In your working with startups and startup contract law, just high level, are there benefits? One of my co-founders is one of the team members is not a citizen of the United States, and I was wondering if you see if there's benefits. I thought I'd read somewhere being a co-founder to help a path towards citizenship. And have you seen that in the startup contract formations you've done? Again, I know it's mainly an immigration law question, but I know there was some talk in Congress about making some kind of accelerated benefits for those that are co-founders. Wondering if you can talk to that point.
Yeah, I don't really keep up on that. I'm not an immigration attorney. I am familiar with like the H-1B visa that's used a lot. And yes, there's caps on how many people can come in under that visa. And there's constant talk about, you know, raising the caps or accelerating. So I'm just vaguely aware of what you're talking about. Not enough to really intelligently provide much more valuable information on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Nataraj. He had a question in the chat about filing. Scroll up here. He registered a C Corp in California and Delaware as a separate entity. What should I do? Do I need to merge and dissolve one in California?
Oh, interesting. So if I understand that, I'm not reading it because there's a lot of so I guess what you're saying is there's two separate entities, one in Delaware and one is a Delaware Corp and one is a California Corp. If I'm understanding that correctly, I think that's chaotic. If you're running one business, you should have one entity. And if you're going to combine them, yes, you definitely need an attorney because you have to sort out which one owns what assets. And you cannot haphazardly just combine these. There's strict, you know, merger or convert, you know, it's going to be a merger if you're going to combine them. If each owns valuable assets, you should do probably a merger to make sure the assets are combined properly. If there is one entity that you've actually never fully used, never put assets in, then maybe you can dissolve it. But that definitely would require having an attorney look at the details and figuring out the best path forward.
Did you want to add any commentary? Or you can write it in the chat. Okay.
I just noticed in the chat, somebody earlier posted a Delaware tax notice, and it was too small for me to see the amount, but it was highlighted. So thanks for doing that. It looked like it was in the hundreds of thousands.
336,000, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
It's so
and
true.
luckily they didn't notice that I did that in 2021 as well.
Oh no.
There's this concept under law called intentional infliction of emotional distress. You can sue somebody for intentionally causing you emotional distress. And I somewhat think that Delaware sending these notices is because I have literally had, you know, co-founders, you know, call me and I would freaking have a heart attack if I saw that I owed $300,000 for my startup. Like, I think that's abusive, actually.
Am I up on a question, Amy?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So she may cover this. I think you're covering office hours, and my question relates to those. Does the scope include a review of my corporate creation and governance documents as part of that meeting, or is that not really what we're doing during those office hours?
Yeah, actually, technically, legally, office hours are not providing legal advice, so I can't review documents. I have to maintain, you know, talk in hypothetical terms. So unless you retain me as your attorney, I can't provide legal advice and I can't review detailed documents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the office hours coming up? This was sent out as an email to the Brink clients because that's how we get the list. So if you're not a Brink client, you might not have gotten it or received it, but this is going to be on
It's full actually right now.
It is?
Yeah, just filled up today actually. So kudos to Natalia Pence, who fielded, inquiries and got that all lined up. So we got it all filled up for this month. But there's more than me that does office hours, and hopefully I'll be doing it again.
Yeah. And then is it true you can only sign up once? I can't keep seeing you every office hours.
Yeah, I guess the intent is to, get some hypothetical, kind of like this, to get some high level, guidance, but not true. I don't represent you, so I can't provide legal guidance to you.
And then I like to say, like, save your, because you can't keep coming back to them through the office hours. Go when you like save up all your big questions and book that time. So, okay, so we don't have, Kelly, so we had breakout rooms, but I feel like this is pretty good free legal advice. And so we're going to keep going.
Technically, it's not legal advice. It's just discussion. It's just informational.
I think it's echoing something I heard that was incorrect. So thank you for that.
I know.
This is very, very important. Okay, so we'll go with Kelly Lon. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, sorry about that. Actually, Kelly set this meeting up for me. My name is James. Hey, Brian, thanks so much. You've been doing a great job with this question.
Glad you like it, yeah.
Yeah, this has been really helpful. So we have a scenario here where we created our corporation in Delaware, and you did touch on the fact that because it's in Delaware, it's going to have different laws and applications as being in California, and we're all here in California. But I, being the owner of the company, I brought on 2 new people and we just created our contracts, but we did it as, I set everyone up as independent contractors. And I know you said that may not be the best approach, but I want to get a little bit more clarification on that and what the best approach will need to take. They're going to have substantial responsibilities in the business, and I issue them shares of ownership, which will vest over 4 years. And I'm wondering what I need to do to kind of protect the company and to make sure we're following tax law.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions there. But I think you should look closely at, what are the qualifications to properly categorize someone as an independent contractor. So the one slide I had gave a few bullet points there. So under the business services agreement exception, remember it's exception. So California automatically classifies anyone providing services as a W-2 employee. Now you have to find an exception to get out of W-2 employee treatment. And to qualify for that exception, you have to meet all of the requirements of that exception. My slide only had some of the select bullet points of those. There's about 10 under the business services contract. So you need to, consult with an attorney and get to that law and analyze the situation with that each service provider. You have to talk about review with your attorney. What is it exactly that service provider is doing? And do they indeed meet the qualifications to be under the exception to be classified as a contractor? If they're deeply involved with the company and they're rendering services for the company, I question whether they would meet those requirements. They may. I'm with a law firm. I'm a totally separate entity. I have my own website advertising services. I can be deeply involved with another company, providing services to that company. But it's very clear that I also do this for a lot of other companies, and I advertise my services to others. So it's very clear that I am not just working for this one company, even though I'm deeply involved in it. I do this for a lot of companies. And that's kind of the idea with the independent contractor.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And just really quickly, when it comes to registering in California, will we have to register as a foreign entity as well? More than
if you're based in California and running it from California, yes, you have to do what's called qualify to do business in California.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, Andre.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Thank you. As everyone else has said, I'm a developer. I'm working on a machine learning platform and making a lot of headway the last couple of weeks. I had a question in the slides. You mentioned open source licensing for software.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just wanted to see if you could offer any general guidance around that. I'm utilizing a lot of APIs and bluntly, I'm, scrubbing the internet in places where people are posting publicly through APIs and where the sites are allowing it. But I wanted to know if you had any general guidance around that. I know, like for ChatGPT and other machine learning tools, it said it was trained widely on the internet. So, yeah, any guidance around how to navigate that would be great.
It's hard for me to get into detail, but just at a surface level, I included that bullet point because I did have a client that was doing an acquisition deal, and it was actually a fairly complex company and multi-million-dollar acquisition. And I brought this up to the client that you need to make very clear that your code complies with all the open source software licensing agreements. And they assured me up and down that they were. And then the buyer did an independent audit of the code and found tons of open source code and there was no compliance with open source. So we had to pause the acquisition and they rewrote their code to take all of the open source out because it would have been too difficult to comply with the license. So it's been a long time, the GPL license and other licenses like that, they have things in there like you have to provide notice, or sometimes you have to actually, if you modify the code, you have to also offer that back to the community along with a notice. So even though it's open source and it's widely available, there are strict requirements under the license agreements that govern each particular piece of code. So you just need to be very rigorous about looking at whatever code you're pulling. You need to look at what license is this under and what do I have to do to comply with that license. And some open source you do not want to put in your code because it does require that you put it back out to the community. So you need, again, I guess the bottom line of this discussion is just pay careful attention to what license agreement. Again, even though it's open and freely shareable, it is going to be under a license agreement. So you have to look at that and make sure you comply.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, you got time for one more?
Definitely.
All right, Kurt.
Hey, Brian. So my question is, right now I'm an LLC. We have two 50-50 members. We're looking to add on 4 owners, a couple percent each, and stay in LLC for the first couple of years, like you mentioned, but later on likely go with the C Corp election. And so my question is, how will equity transition? So right now, if it's just ownership percentage, how do you go about transitioning into, if it's shares for a C Corp, looking for investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the default rule is that it just transfers evenly. So if someone held 20% in the LLC, then they're going to be issued stock that represents 20% in the newly formed company. If you want to vary that, then you have to get special consent from all of the equity holders. But again, typically you just kind of transfer it straight over. So 4% in the LLC, you issue stock that represents 4% in the new company. One tricky thing, you didn't ask this, but I guess I'll throw it out, is if an LLC starts issuing what are called stock options. You can't do incentive options, but you can do non-qualified stock options. And if you do a conversion of an LLC to a C Corp that has stock options, it's wildly complex. And I've seen good attorneys at big law firms screw this up really bad. So just be aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got about 6 minutes left and we don't have any hands up. So Brian, thank you for going overtime.
Well, I went overtime initially, so thank you for staying on.
Yeah, so
I'm glad it was valuable.
Yes, thank you. And so I know Brian, Stephen will send everybody a follow-up email with a link to the slides and all of Brian's contact information. And if you are a Brink client and I think you have to click the button that you'll receive emails, then you can get the notice of when Brian's going to have his next office hours. So let's give him all a digital round of applause.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, this is fun. I enjoyed doing it.
I'm going to share, so just in closing, I'm going to share, can everyone see my screen? Which is, yeah, the Angel this is the Angel Conference website. Is that what everyone sees? Yeah, okay. So this is when you look to see what our events are, this is the sdangels.com/events. We are here on November 7th. Next week is the pitch deconstruction, which I know you're all going to be there, giving your 1-minute pitch or not. And then I saw in the chat, people were asking about due diligence. After that, we'll be on Zoom. We'll have, it's going to be Dean Rosenberg from New Fund Ventures and JC Ruffalo from Co-Fund. And they're going to talk about what happens in due diligence. And each one will talk about how their fund addresses and conducts due diligence. So very informative. And then we'll follow that with a business, like a go-to-market with Maria Blanche Gonzalez from Crescent Ventures. And Bonnie Shaw is going to talk about how does PR work. And so that was probably going to be Zoom. I believe it says live here. And then we'll do one more pitch deconstruction. And then the applications are due and we party. And so how do you submit an application? So we keep sending you back to the San Diego Angel Conference website because over here where it says apply, this is the apply page. And then over here in this button says apply, and it will take you to GUST. And this is how you apply for funding. And this is Athletiverse from last year, or earlier this year, April 22nd, 2023, and some of our SDAC investors here. So Misty, I saw you on your camera's off. Did you want to make any closing remarks?
I just say, I'm just so grateful everybody keeps showing up. I mean, I always learn a ton of stuff. The speakers tonight were great. We're really trying hard to push super good content. We want you to be able to put a deck together that makes a difference, but more importantly, we want you to get the fundamentals right so that your company is actually investment worthy. I can get you a meeting with an investor. What I really want to do is help help all of you get to the place where you can survive that due diligence process. So, we do this every year. We know a lot of you are going to recognize, like, actually, I got work to do. I need to hit the books, or I need to go, find a good attorney, or, any of a million things. And you might not apply this year, but this whole process is really, set to gear you up to be successful in your investment endeavors, for the long term. So, like Amy said, great team over at the Brink. You can get more consulting help. After the application deadline, she'll put her whole team on it for the first time this year. We actually have a nice big fat window. We usually just have like 2 weeks to review applications, and this year we've got 5 or 6. Investors aren't going to start looking at the applications until February. This is the longest window we've ever tried. And we're doing that on purpose to see if we can get more of your companies ready to go. So whether or not you sign up to do work with the Brink, their team will still step in and try and do at least a first review of your materials in GUST and help to bring anything to your attention. We haven't had any questions this year about the video, but there's a great how-to in the FAQs. We want everybody to put a video together. And then when investors start looking, we ask all the investors to look at all of the videos for every single application, even though we know all the investors aren't going to get through every single deal in that first couple of weeks. So it's the best thing that you can do. It doesn't have to be highly produced or super fancy. That we're really looking for content, not the aesthetics. So that's a question we haven't heard yet. I think also when we do the due diligence session that's coming up, we will give you a copy of the vault that we use with our finalists. So everybody will have that. So you can start to think, like, what does it take to get myself organized and keep myself organized so that when that opportunity arises, you've already got it ready to go. Because it's a pretty heavy lift to put together a vault. And we'll give everybody access to one that you can download and copy. And with that, it's really important. We really need a good show next week. Like Amy said, we're bringing in the team from the Department of, what is it? I always know this one. The Department of the Small Business Advocate. It's basically the governor's department that oversees all the small business activities. And the founder is a close friend. Her number one is a close friend. And they're coming down to evaluate. So right now, Amy's running the favored program in the state for diversity, equity, inclusion. And they want to come see how it looks. And I can't think of a better thing we can do than give everybody 60 seconds to stand up and, tell them what you're all about. So really looking forward to that and hope you have a really great show. And of course, we'll have pizza. It'll be gross. It's like part of the founder ethos. You got to come and eat the terrible pizza and work business.
All right. So with that, yep. Thank you, Misty. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you next week at the Pitch Decon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so that was a good turnout.
It was a good turnout. I didn't see what the number was at the end. Did we hold people till the end? I saw as many as 75. I don't know what the high point was, but I saw 75.
Yeah, there was maybe like 50 or a little less that might have stayed all the way through.
Yeah, I think the final number was about 46.
Okay.
Well, it's a tough, Brian's stuff's pretty dense. It's a pretty heavy. Like I love it. And if